thinking about this more broadly in terms of the context of the economy? I mean, the potential impact on GDP growth.
So the two pieces there. We've seen this last 12 months is a very low average in our overall PMI, showing that continued slowdown in growth overall. But the last few months, we've seen good improvements. Tariffs and some of the impacts for the shutdown in the aviation industry certainly looks like they were impacting deliveries this month. But it could be, I mean, the numbers look today like we're seeing an ongoing trend of improvement from our lows in the summer where there was so much uncertainty around tariffs. It looks like a really good sign overall for GDP growth.
New services orders 52.9, last month 56.2. Do we take anything away from that?
So I didn't take anything too strong other than we're seeing continued expansion, which is a positive sign. When we look at backlog of orders, although it's still in contraction, we have seen some improvement in that number as well. So that's a good sign for stability and overall improvement and continued growth.
All right, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Steve Miller, chairman of the Institute for Supply Management, zooming in from Aledo, Texas. Why Aledo, Texas? Is the home of the TV show Landman.
Your favorite show at this point.
I tied it in there. See how I did that? All right, let's go to Jeff Tucker right here. Get a Bloomberg Business Flash. John, we got this.
All right, Billy Bob. This flash brought to you by IBKR. Will the U.S. economy enter a recession by the end of Q4 2025? An IBKR forecast trader, the yes was recently at 6%. Start predicting today at ibkr.com/forecast. Last trading day for this contract, March 26th. 2026. Let me start off with Microsoft, among the most actively and also one of the worst performing stocks right now in the S&P 500. Weighing on the broader market as well, the information reported the company lowered expectations for how quickly they get customers to spend money on newer AI products. So that'll do it. On the retail front, Macy's lowered its profit forecast disappointing. Delta expects to take a $200 million profit hit from the government shutdown, but they also say demand remains healthy. So Delta shares, they were up almost to 3%. Meantime, like a lot of investors, Lori Heinel at State Street Global focused on next week's Fed meeting.
We do think that the Fed should cut again here in December, and we think that they will. And we actually think that 2026 is going to see a few more cuts. And you have to look at this in the context of a sort of post-COVID recovery and then a slowing growth environment generally. We do think that those additional cuts are going to be necessary to propel the economy forward.
Right now, the S&P 500 down 2, the NASDAQ down 58. The Dow's up 105 points. I guess you saw this one coming. Automakers getting into the insurance business. So they have lots of data on how vehicles have driven. The car companies started bringing their own insurance products. Tesla, for example, offering its own insurance in states like California. General Motors actually leverages information taken in through its OnStar service to offer data-driven pricing. I feel like it's
Do they have big data? It's all big data.
Does Vespa collect any data on you?
I don't know.
Hopefully
not. I hope not.
The way he drives?
Sure.
Look out for you, Paul.
Sure.
We check the markets for you all day long. Right here on Bloomberg Radio, I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash North Pole.
50 cc's of raw power on the Jersey Shore. It's actually off the Vespas to bed for the winter.
Did you?
So it's kind of...
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. We are doing a live stream on December 3rd on YouTube, on Rumble, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support the work that I do by subscribing to the channels, making sure you follow me on the different social media like X and GETTR, Substack, TikTok. There's lots of ways to watch my content. I put these videos out for free. I have thousands of videos for free for everybody. So please help support the work. You can share the links, ask your social media to follow me. Make sure you follow me on all these different channels. And if you'd like to support through donations, you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You could be a paid member to my Substack or Patreon channel. You can also be a member on my Buy Me a Coffee channel. So many ways to support the work. All these videos are for free. So please help support the work. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Let's listen into Bloomberg.
Talk about being down right now, down more than 16%. Stocks trading at the lowest level since June 2023 on a trailing 12-month average, down about 43%. Today's weakness comes after earnings. Really not a bad report, all things considered, but when you look under the surface and kind of calling out some of the reaction from Bloomberg Intelligence's Sunil Raghgopal, saying that basically concerns around AI headwinds for the company, for its seat-based revenue model, continuing to show up. Overall, consumer growth below consensus. Reading through some of the trading notes that I get in the morning, kind of not much going on. And in this market, you really want to see growth. You want to see kind of an ability to show that not only are you benefiting from AI at a minimum, that you're not potentially at risk of AI. GitLab not showing up in either regard.
And no idea what GitLab does. Thankfully, Bloomberg has the DES function description. They're an application software company. They're trying to get the AI wave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else we got? We got another one for us, microchip.
We'll cap off with microchip technology, semiconductor manufacturer. I'll get that off the top. Ticker MCHP, a $33.5 billion company right now. It's trading up almost 10%. Best day since mid-August. This came again. We're still in the thick of tech earnings season, so the company beat expectations on the top and bottom line. Again, maybe getting a bit of a benefit from those Marvell numbers, but when you look at the analyst reactions, basically saying that strong booking showing up, management talking up its backlog, it does seem like things are going quite well, keeping in mind that the company did pre-announce booking strength back a little while ago. So really looking at some of the management commentary on the call, it does seem optimistic. Again, ticker MCHP on microchip up more than 8%.
Talk to us about the new issue market. It's been a flurry right after Labor Day. And are we still seeing stuff, or they kind of shut down for the season?
Well, we reported yesterday that Medline, which could raise $5 billion, would be the biggest deal of the year, expected to start that formal marketing process early next week. That's a Carlyle, Blackstone, H&F asset in the healthcare space. Going to be a big one. So that'll likely make some bankers' years. In an odd deal. You know where they don't see these deals at the tail end of the year.
And a lot of action we've really been seeing in the healthcare space more broadly. So
yeah, it's kind of when you talk to investors and bankers, they're hoping that this can kind of open up private equity. There still is not the demand that we're seeing for biotech in particular, which is such a big deal for the new issue market, but no, that'll be a good test.
Yeah, that's, if it's owned by these big private equity companies, they've had an issue. Like, this is how private equity was first explained to me when I was a kid. It's easy to raise the money. It's really easy to deploy the money. It's really hard to monetize your investments. That's where the real skill comes in. That's been a challenge for private equity.
It's been a challenge for private equity. It's been a challenge particularly in the U.S. I go back to the middle of this year, SailPoint, a Thoma Bravo asset, pushed on price according to investors. They priced above range. They're down 17%. Wow. NIQ Global down 28%. So when you look at the pre-E deals, performance, you're behind IPOs for alpha generation. You want to outperform on an average basis the entire year here in the U.S., only up 7%. So you're trailing the S&P 500. You've got private equity leverage, the sell down overhang. So Medline's going to be a good test of kind of deal execution, just given that it's been in the hopper for some time.
what are you hearing in terms of expectations for next year?
Hopium
in your head yet?
Hopium reigns eternal. I mean, bankers are candid, right? Expectations were high for 2025. It was a fine year. Expectations are that we should at least match where we're at in 2026. The big question is, do private equity sponsors show up? Are they willing to get these deals out of the door? And if that doesn't happen, is there enough tech companies that can kind of carry the baton? There's a lot of debate around who would go public and how to fill some of that volume.
Yeah, I would think, and I've been proven wrong, that if I'm private equity, I just want to get these things out the door. I need to monetize these things because I need to go out, return that capital to my LPs so I can raise more capital and get more management fees. But I know they're just loath to do it down round like this. To IPO something at below where they're carrying.
Well, that's the tough part, right? So if you are in the market or want to be in the market for another fund, well, people want to see where your IRR is. If I take you public at a discount to where we bought it, I'm not really delivering on those metrics.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, Billy, let's thanks so much. We appreciate it. For more conversations like this, subscribe to our Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. When you do this regularly, you're slowing down the aging process. Now, by detoxifying your body, soaking up free radicals, and lowering the inflammation, you're also helping your immune system and your endocrine system. Bringing down inflammation will help with your joints. You'll recover quicker after a workout, and you'll help with your brain function. By reducing inflammation at the neuron level, you're helping to support the health of the neuron. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley. This is a month supply, very high quality, with lots of micronutrients. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Also, get the structural nano silver soaps, very high quality for the health of your skin. You can get it in lemongrass, charcoal tea tree, in peppermint, and also in lavender. Very high quality structural nano silver soaps. Get a few bars for your household. You can use them as gifts for the holidays. Help support the work that I do. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's listen in to Fox Live. No. Let's listen into CNBC's November private payrolls unexpectedly fell by 32,000.
We are approaching 8:15 a.m., and that means the November ADP private payroll figure is going to be upon us. That's less than 30 seconds away. Ahead of that, let's check the markets. We've been in the green all morning long, but right now the Dow futures are up near their highs, about 137 points above their value. S&P futures up by close to 22. The NASDAQ indicated up by about 75. And if you've been watching treasuries, you will see that the 10-year is sitting at 406. The 2-year is at 349.
Well, ADP out with November private payroll data. We're going to get from Steve Leisman, but we have the person right here. This is like one of those middlemen in healthcare. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, a big miss on the ADP payrolls. The private payroll company saying private payroll shed 32,000 workers in November. That's the 4th negative number in the past 6 months for this series. Take a look here. The estimate was for 40,000, so the street was off on this one. And how did you get there? Well, goods producing shed 19,000 workers, service producing shedding 13,000 workers. But the big story here, and I'll show you more detail on this, is what's happening with small business, down 120,000. Medium and large business doing okay, up 51 and 39,000 respectively. But take a look at this chart here. Virtually all of the job losses have come from small business, which has been negative in 6 of 7 months since April. Without those losses, ADP numbers would actually be positive, but you can't get rid of it. You can't exclude small business. And then you look at it by sector. Well, we've seen those two sectors do it. Education, health services, and hospitality leading the way, but manufacturing down, information down, and professional business services down by 26,000. Also, another sign of weakness in the job market. Job stayers, their wages up 4.4. That's down to 10 from the prior month. And job changers, that was a big number, or had been. That's down 0.4 of a point to 6.3%. So, Joe, at least according to ADP, additional weakness in the job market, and small business getting hammered. And there is some information that some of this may be coming from being hammered by the tariffs.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I'm watching, the markets. I saw Bitcoin above 93. No, it didn't. But this, I don't think people know whether, if we already had a cut in the cards, then we don't need any weak data.
We don't really want any.
But we might need it for the next, the next ones are less sure now. So maybe it would help with those, or maybe it's just downright bad and not great when we lose jobs. So I don't think people know what to do. Let's see what Neil thinks. Joining us now, Neil Richardson, ADP chief economist, and you're not here to tell us what the stock market should be based on these numbers. You just tell us that things have worsened in the last month.
Yeah, this is a small firm story. This is even more than a small firm story, Joe. This is a mom and pop story. Because if you look at where the losses came in, it was for firms with headcount under 50. And you take that and you extrapolate it to the industries, those are the same industries. Construction, for example, where there are a lot of small firms. And so when you think about what small firms are dealing with, you put your mind into the space of a small firm owner, they're not going to raise their hand and say, we're cutting by 10%. They're just not going to replace that retired worker. They are just going to let attrition take care of this issue for them. They are going to have a hiring freeze. They may not hire a teenager or two in the bakery over the holiday season. They're going to make these small changes that add up to a lot because 44% of U.S. workers work in these mom and pop
What's ailing them? What is ailing them? What's the problem? Tariffs?
You used to be able to look at your consumer demand and your traffic and make the story. But if you're a small firm owner today, you have to think about your supplier. You have to think about the Supreme Court decision that will kind of pave the way for tariffs. You're going to have to think about all of these things instead of just your own foot traffic. And so what that means is that you may delay your decision making when it comes to hiring. You don't want to pass along those price increases to the consumer. And there's no evidence that we're seeing small firms do that in lockstep. What they're doing is they're absorbing it, they're taking a profit hit, and they may be delaying or curtailing hiring.
So how can bigger companies, they just have lawyers or something? I mean, how does it work?
They have more options. They can change suppliers. The fixed costs for firms, small firms, are variable costs for large firms. They can invest broadly. They can be price dictators when it comes to their suppliers. And you have to also understand where we are in terms of the inflation story. It's not just inflation growth. It is the cumulative effect of 24% increases in price levels in the last 5 years. So even modest inflation from here is on top of really high price increases over the last several years.
The affordability crisis wasn't helped by the 3% inflation that we've got over the last year, but the 21.5% prior to that, it accounts for a lot of it. And this is just like layering on another.
Economists are happy with smaller inflation, lower inflation,
right,
slower, but the price levels are still there.
45%.
Right. That's right. And so you add in all the effects and you think about what a small firm can change. They can change their hiring patterns, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Is this the beginning of a series of numbers like this, or is it a coughing?
No, serious.
If we knew that,
then I could be in those prediction markets that you were talking about earlier. But we don't know that, and I think it will depend on the consumer. Remember that overall GDP growth, at least in terms of our last read, the second quarter GDP was strong. And it was strengthened by that resilient high-income consumer. If that resilient high-income consumer is enough to pull the water for the rest of us, for the low-income households, for the middle-income households, you may see a resurgence in small firm hiring demand. And so it really now is a more concentrated economic path forward that is dependent on AI investment and a well-heeled consumer.
I was going to ask you if you had anything, Steve, but they're playing this music again. Any just final thoughts? No, not final thoughts, but any concluding thoughts here?
All right, we're going to go to a video about China. But before I do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley works very similar to the heirloom barley, but you get an added benefit. This will really help to build muscle. Take this every day. Do resistance training. It'll bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals. You'll recover quicker after your workout. This is a month's supply. And again, by detoxifying your body regularly and bringing down inflammation, that's helping your vascular system, your immune system, your endocrine system, even your brain function. So please go to my store and get the heirloom barley. It's very high quality. And take the zeolite. Zeolite will help to detoxify your body. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. What this will do is bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take it every day. And by doing that, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. Make sure you drink filtered water and stay away from processed foods. There's lots of chemicals in processed foods that are bad for you. In addition, take a look at your house and look at the cleaning supplies you have in your garage or in your basement. Make sure you get rid of them if you don't need them, or put them in double layered containers. Cleaning your environment will reduce your exposure to chemicals. So please go to my store, get the zeolite. This is a great way to detoxify your body. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And if you follow the stacking that I'm mentioning in this video, you're really going to get the added benefits of slowing down the aging process, improving your vitality, and you'll have more longevity. Thank you. But please go to the store and help support the work. All right, what we're going to do now is go to Fox Business and talk about China.
Welcome back. The chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Paul Atkins, joined me yesterday at the New York Stock Exchange after he gave a speech on the burdens of too much disclosure and too much regulation. So I asked him about the disclosures from Chinese companies trading on U.S. exchanges. Watch. Mr. Chairman, are there any other countries that do not follow the same disclosure rules that American companies follow aside from China? Because I know that China and Chinese companies did not follow the same disclosure rules that American companies did. And then there was a rule put in that they have to. I don't know where we are on that. But are there any other countries that have that allowance other than China?
Oh, there are a lot. I mean, because every country is different. And even our accounting principles, United States generally accepted accounting principles, US GAAP, is different a bit from the international financial reporting standards that a lot of other countries have used. And then the organic disclosure from the statutes of, say, Germany or Britain or whatever have different rules around executive compensation, for example, and other things. So historically, the SEC has given allowance for that because we want well-regulated companies from other countries to come and then list in the United States so that Americans can buy under American rules and know that they have enforceability contract and those sorts of protections that I think are, that investors really value in the United States, which has made our market so successful. So we've allowed that historically, and then earlier this year we came out with a concept release for what we call these foreign private issuers, being non-state issuers, non-sovereign issuers. So where historically, we've recognized that if a company has its primary listing in another country and under another country's rules, that we will allow them to basically use their home country rules here in the United States and not force them to comply with all of our requirements, like executive comp and things like that. And let's just say that in more recent years, the last decade or so, there have been Chinese companies, for example, operating in China, but they're incorporated, say, in the Caribbean, and their primary listing is here in the United States. So, but they're still viewed as a foreign private issuer and then given dispensation in not having to comply with U.S. rules, even though they are listed here primarily. Our concept release was asking, should that still be the case? How should we approach this, and to get comment from around the world, basically, on this, because obviously we have worldwide investors who are interested in the markets.
And I guess that's really what I'm getting at. I'm just trying to understand how it is possible that now what has become obvious to us, our number one adversary, has so many companies trading in the U.S. and the most liquid, deepest capital markets in the world, obviously the envy of the rest of the world. And yet, I don't know, one week we're sort of friendly with the Chinese Communist Party, the next week, well, now they're holding back rare earths. I mean, is there anything to be done in terms of keeping them honest?
Well, I mean, Congress has passed a statute requiring the SEC to look at the companies, and in particular Chinese companies. So I don't want to kind of step on anyone in particular, but I think we need to make sure that our rules are complied with, and that our laws are complied with, that we have access to auditing working papers. That was one big issue that Congress addressed in their statute, because there are being questions before whether or not one could get working papers of auditors as they did their work for the annual reports and annual reports of Chinese companies in particular, because there's a blocking statute to keep auditors out and keep the working papers there in China. So that we'll be looking into. There's Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, over which the SEC has oversight. We are actively looking at all of that.
So what is your reaction to, Congressman John Mulliner and the chairman of and the whole China Select Committee? He's the chairman of the committee, demanding that Morgan Stanley and J.P. Morgan walk away from these Chinese IPOs that they have been working on, and say, look, we don't want those companies to be encouraged by American banks because those companies are tied to the Chinese People's Liberation Army. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, that's why Congress is there to take, steps there. We don't really have the authority at the SEC, in general to do that. But like I said, I think we can, through disclosure requirements, and I think some of that is obviously very material, financially material as well to the company and to its prospects, and where it's subject and under what rules and everything else. So that's very important for us to focus on and not lose sight of. But we're looking at this whole area, and we'll be on top of it. And after this this foreign private issuer concept release we put out, we'll come up with a proposal and then put that out next year, and then adopt the final.
Yeah, because I know I've asked you this a couple of times, and
What else? All right, this video here is from CNN about Putin's warning to Europe before he has his meeting with Trump's envoys. This is CNN.
Top negotiators have not closed a deal with Russia's president to end his so-called special military operation in Ukraine. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner sat with Russian President Vladimir Putin in a meeting that lasted nearly 5 hours. A top Kremlin aide says those talks were, quote, constructive and highly substantive, but there are other points that, quote, do not suit us. Putin appears to be accusing Europe of altering the Trump administration's original 28-point peace plan. That proposal had been criticized for appearing to favor Russia. He also said this.
We are not planning to go to war with Europe. I have already spoken about this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly wants to go to war with us and starts, we are ready right now.
Well, shortly after the meeting ended, a top Russian official posted a single word on social media, productive, punctuated by a dove and an olive branch emoji. Well, CNN Salma Abdelaziz joins us now live from London. Salma, no deal, perhaps no surprise there, but what comes next and what more are you learning about these talks? Nearly 5 hours.
Nearly 5 hours of talks described as substantive by the Russians, but no compromise, no deal. Now, I do want to say that we have no readout from the American side as to how these talks progressed, but From the Russian side, we are hearing positive indications, but of course, no agreement. Now, there's been a lot of concern about how the United States is handling these talks. It seems that President Trump is absolutely desperate for a deal, whereas, of course, Ukraine and its European allies in NATO are saying, hey, slow down. I want you to take a listen to what the NATO Secretary General said just before these talks were about to begin. He was doorstepped in Brussels. Take a listen.
How do we make sure that Ukraine stays as strong as possible? The peace talks are ongoing. That's good. But at the same time, we have to make sure that whilst they take place, and we are not sure when they will end, that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position to keep the fight going, to fight back against the Russians, but also in the strongest possible position when peace talks.
So what do we know? Well, these talks culminated after a week of intensive diplomacy. What was the original 28 plan that was put forward by President Trump was seen essentially as a wish list for President Putin. The Ukrainian delegation met with an American delegation in Geneva shortly after that proposal and essentially pushed for more concessions from Russia. The United States, in the form of Jared Kushner, of course, the president's son-in-law, and the special envoy, Mr. Witkoff, went to the Kremlin with these changes. Now, we don't have any details on exactly what those changes were, what those demands were from Ukraine, but we know in the past that the sticking points have been Russia calling for Ukraine to denounce its aspirations to join NATO, Ukraine also ceding territory in the Donbass, something that's absolutely a red line, and also agreeing to downsize its military potentially, or downsize its aspirations to grow its military in the future. Now, these are, again, red lines for Ukraine, but for President Putin, who seems to be biding his time, there is no issue here in running down the clock. It was only a couple of hours or a few hours, about a day before his meeting with Mr. Kushner and Mr. Witkoff, that Russia claimed the victory of yet another city, Pokrovsk. Now, Ukraine disputes that victory, but very much President Putin, in military fatigues, declaring that victory, using that as an opportunity to show that Russia is not only winning in his mind on the battlefield, but is in no need, essentially, of a compromise. So the next step, what do we wait for next year? Well, first of all, we need to hear from the American side, of course, how they believe this 5 hours of talks went. We need to understand what are the next steps here. Now, one might ask for a direct meeting between President Putin and President Trump, but the Kremlin has indicated the time is not now for that. Rosemary?
Many thanks to Salma Abdelaziz bringing us that live report from London. Appreciate it. Nigel Gould-Davies is a senior fellow for Russia and Eurasia at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. He joins me now from London. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
So, President Trump's special envoy and son-in-law failed to reach a compromise after nearly 5 hours of talks with President Putin, who made Witkoff and Kushner wait for more than an hour. Putin apparently not happy with Europe's input on the altered peace plan. What did you make of the long talks ending in no deal, and what is Putin's message here, do you think?
Well, firstly, it's possible that more has happened and more has been discussed and so far publicly disclosed. But on the basis of what we now know, it's completely unsurprising to me that these talks have failed and made no substantive progress. There has been a sort of 10 days or so of sound and fury around the 28-point plan, as your reporter was saying, and all of the diplomacy that's followed from that. But the underlying structure of the situation remains entirely unchanged. Russia's fundamental demands and ambitions to subordinate Ukraine remain fundamentally incompatible with Ukraine's continued willingness and ability to resist Russia. And for all of the talks, there's no sign of any movement for compromise on either side. So as much as anything, I think this is a way for Putin to have restated his, frankly, uncompromising positions and to try to hope that America will now impose pressure on Ukraine to make fundamental compromises. I don't think it's likely that Ukraine will do that. I'm just back from 10 days in Kiev, and while the people are weary, they still retain their determination to resist Ukraine and not make compromises that will fundamentally jeopardize their security.
Why do you think U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio isn't present here at these talks instead of Witkoff and Kushner? And did their presence indicate this was more about business deals rather than peace deals?
That's a very interesting question. And if it's a matter of the politics of the Trump administration, well, one has to sort of try to conduct some sort of White House criminology, so to speak, of the different views and degrees of influence that different factions wield. I think, and partly it's because there's an understanding that Secretary of State Rubio has, let's say, a more orthodox and traditional understanding of the extent to which Russia presents threats to Europe and to American security. And Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner are inherently more willing to see things from Russia's point of view, in contrast to America's long-standing commitments. To your question about the distinction between business deals and peace plans, I mean, it's worth considering whether that really is a distinction, or whether, in some sense, all of them are bound up together. Because I think the more that we've seen of America's peace plan emerge, and the more that reporters have sort of dug and discovered about what might be going on here, there is a really increasingly alarming sense that one of the drivers of President Trump's policy towards Russia is indeed a determination and aspiration to reach business deals that may benefit not only America as a whole, but particular companies and individuals that enjoy some access or relationship with this White House. So, and this is something I'm not sure you've ever seen in American foreign policy before. It's geopolitics defined in terms of private corporate interests. So it's very unsettling and new development.
And of course, as you point out, we'll wait to see what the next step is here. Nigel Ball-Davies, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, we're going to go to Jacket Gate by Patel. This is on Fox News. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer. Follow my advice and stack them accordingly. These are products that I take every day to slow down the aging process. I'm in my 50s. I am extremely healthy. Follow my lead on this and apply a holistic approach to your life, and you will slow down the aging process. Get the cleanse. Cleanse is 30 parts per million or max 35, which is 35 parts per million. Take either one. Take a teaspoon a day every day. Swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 or 30 seconds, and then swallow. Swallow it. What this will do is improve your oral cavity, your oral pharynx, help with your mucosal barrier, and help with the health of your epithelial lining. This is extremely important to take during the fall and the winter season, during the allergy season, but also to do it year-round. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, it's important that you take a double dose of this. So, like, let's say take a teaspoon or two in that situation. Once everything's all clear, then you go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years, every day. So please go to my store, get the Max 35 or the Cleanse. What you'll also notice is that if you stack this with C60, you do this, take the teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle, swallow it, and then take the C60, you'll notice that actually your breathing is better. All right, you'll be able to have a better breathing, better respiration, flow of respiration. So please go to my store, get the Max 35 or the Cleanse, and that will boost up your immune system. Super important. And neutralize. Right? So get that, very important. Also, I have dual purpose deodorants. These deodorants are for males and females. You can get in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. use them every day as a deodorant, but it'll help to detoxify your body. It's dual purpose. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. No aluminum, no baking soda, all natural ingredients, very high quality deodorants that help to detoxify your body. Now, when you're detoxifying your body, your endocrine system and your immune system will perform better. And I was talking about C60. You can get C60 in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or extra virgin olive oil. It has to be in an oil. C60 has to be in an oil for proper absorption. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption. And what this will do is soak up free radicals. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C, 1 molecule of C60. Take it every day, and what this will do is soak up those free radicals, and in your cells and in your tissues, less stress and less inflammation. And what will happen is that the health of the mitochondria will be better. So your cells will produce more ATP. When the cells have more ATP, they will perform better because they have more energy. At the vascular level, C60 will soak up free radicals and reduce plaque formation, so your cardiovascular health will improve. At the neuron level, C60 will soak up the free radicals, boost up the health of the mitochondria. Your neurons need lots of mitochondria, and it's producing the energy, the ATP, and producing the neurotransmitters, so you have better neuroplasticity. So your dendritic connections will improve, so your thinking will improve. You'll have better memory. But you need to do this over longer durations. Now, at the skin level, you have basal layer, and that basal layer helps to produce new skin. The area that produces the new skin cells are at the basal layer. So if the basal layer is healthy, then you'll have better skin. Take C60, it's going to soak up the free radicals at the basal layer and improve the health of the skin. You'll notice that you will have better skin, better immune system, better endocrine system. Your overall body will have more energy. And you'll notice this difference within about 2 months of taking this every day, teaspoon a day. After a year, you will physically look younger. You get max benefits if you stack it with some of the products that I have, and you apply a holistic approach to your life. And that is proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, learn new things, try to calm your body down, being parasympathetic through some sort of meditation or some sort of spirituality. Do resistance training, cardio, stretching, and balancing. You want to be more on the resistance level. Do more as a percentage for resistance versus cardio. You want to build more muscle. You're better off building muscle for anti-aging than building endurance through doing more cardio. So follow a holistic approach to your life, and you will slow down the aging process, and you'll have more vitality in your later years. So please go to my store and get the C60. Very high quality. And it's a cornerstone of my anti-aging protocol. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last, and you're gonna need that free gift for the winter. Now, let's go to Jacket Gate. Because supposedly the internet is all upset about Patel and his jacket.
FBI Director Kash Patel. Mr. Director, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Where does this investigation tonight stand?
Well, first and foremost, our prayers to the family of the fallen soldier, and our prayers to the family of hopefully this individual who continues to recover.
This is a sprawling international terrorism investigation that the FBI is leading out on, and we are making sure to work with our interagency partners and have already issued dozens of pieces of legal processes, dozens of devices, already hit 2 houses and interviewed many individuals associated with the subject. And that investigation is going to continue on to anyone and everyone this person ever spoke to. We're not going to leave any stone unturned. We're going to collect the evidence. We're going to hand it off to our partners at DOJ and make sure he's prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And anyone else that was responsible for this vicious, heinous attack will be held to the same account.
Now, today, the DHS Secretary Noem suggested that the suspect was radicalized here in the United States. What more can you tell us? Because that's what our viewers want to learn a lot about.
Yes, and we'll speak to that publicly in our documents in court. That is a very much ongoing piece of our investigation, where and how he was radicalized, and we're working with our partners at DHS and everywhere else to make sure we speak in court with crystal clarity and unity, and we'll be doing so soon.
And the vetting process, Mr. Director, we raised red flags about this back in 2021 on the angle, but that OIG report from 2022 says there were serious issues with the ability to vet Afghan refugees after that pullout from Afghanistan. And one bill has already been introduced in Congress would mandate that all refugees be re-vetted. Do you think that is a good idea? Your reaction tonight to that?
You hit it on the head. The problem with this case shows the emblematic failure of the Biden administration to vet anyone who came here from Afghanistan after the disastrous withdrawal. Zero. It's not like people were even partially vetted. They refused to do so. So it now falls to us in this administration to make sure we vet every single person that came in here, legally or illegally or otherwise, and make sure there is no derogatory or criminal information or terrorist ties. And we are going to do that mission.
And Mr. Director, another big issue that is concerning Americans and involves the refugee community, but in Minnesota, is the Treasury Department's investigation of that massive fraud there in the Somali community. So how is the FBI working that, and what can you tell us tonight, given the plethora of reporting and the defensive posture of both the mayor and the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz?
What I can tell you is the FBI let out on an investigation, and we publicized it months ago. We've gotten 78 people that have been arrested pursuant to our investigation along with the interagency, and that investigation is very much ongoing. We are not finished. It was one of the largest fraud scams ever committed in the state of Minnesota history, and we are going to continue to interview and subpoena anyone involved with this case. It is very much ongoing and live.
There are a lot of foreign interests that seem to be causing trouble in the United States. And I know the FBI today announced that that Chinese national pled guilty to smuggling dangerous pathogens into Michigan. And a student at the University of Michigan, that individual has been deported, the Chinese national. My question is, it seems like kind of a slap on the wrist, deporting her back to China. A lot of people on social media wondering, why didn't she do jail time, or did you seek jail time here for her? Given the danger, potential danger, sir, to our food supply if this pathogen got out?
Look, I can only speak to the... Look, I can only speak to the FBI's mission, and we've already arrested her along with multiple other individuals, including as recently as this past week, on related charges. And we're going to continue to arrest those individuals, and how the State Department and others deal with that matter is something that I would defer to them on.
Yeah, Mr. Director, Democrats, as I know you know this, some never Trump Republicans, are salivating over a new report first obtained by the New York Post. Miranda Devine, she came on last night, talked about it, that takes aim at the FBI under your leadership and that of your deputy, Dan Bongino. So you had current, some former FBI staffers, all anonymous, put together this 115-page report. And now there was some very positive stuff in there, but the overall read was that the agency had become rudderless and that you're more focused on your social media than doing your job. Now, I assume that these are just bitter deep staters, but what is your general reaction to these concerns raised about the state of the FBI 10 months into the Trump administration, part 2?
Yeah, look, anonymous sources always lie, results don't. I'll get to the results in a second. These anonymous sources were individuals from the Comey Ray era that weaponized the Department of Justice and cratered the public trust in the FBI to something that was at levels that have never been seen. 35% public trust in the FBI when we came in 10 months ago. And now we're to believe that these anonymous sources are the ones accusing this FBI, the most successful in history, of being rudderless. Let's just look at the results. If we were so rudderless and we sent our mission out into the country and around the world, how would we have arrested 25,000 violent felons this year alone? That's twice as many as last year alone. How would we have arrested 35% more spies from Russia, China, and Iran than last year alone? How would we have found 6,000 children and identified them? That's up 22% from last year alone. We have taken down criminal networks and those that wish to do harm to our children. We have arrested in the 764 category, the nihilist violence extremist network, a 590% increase on those who wish to prey on our children. Those are just some examples, and I haven't even gotten to the monumental success on fentanyl, where we shut off precursors from China and have seized enough fentanyl, 22% increase this year alone, enough to kill 127 million Americans. We're crushing violent crime. We're defending the homeland. When Dan and I got here, it was a rudderless ship. But we re-executed this mission. We defanged the weaponization that corrupted it. We jettisoned those like these anonymous sources in this reporting. And all they have to talk about is anonymous sources and jackets and leather patches. They can have that all day long. The mission of this FBI is to serve the American people, and we are doing it at a level that has never been done before because of the leadership we have here, and thanks to President Trump's sweeping victory that demanded this place be rid of weaponization and put it back on a course to prosecuting criminals, investigating criminals, and putting away terrorists, and that's what we are doing every single day here.
You mentioned the thing about the patches and the gossipy stuff, which I know you laughed it off on Twitter. But on X, but they said, oh, he refused to get off the plane in Utah after Charlie Kirk's assassination because he wanted a better fitting FBI raid jacket. Is that true? And does fashion really make the man, Cash?
It's 100% false. As you know, look, Laura, sadly, I was at 9/11 at Ground Zero in New York City on 9/11 because I was a White House representative honoring those victims and their names being read. You are very familiar with that. Then we made the immediate decision after Charlie got shot in the neck to fly to Utah unexpectedly to lead the manhunt to find the perpetrator in less than 33 hours because the FBI cut video, put it out in a press conference, and these people are worried about what I was wearing and what patches I was wearing. I was honoring my men and women at the FBI. One of my agents handed me a jacket and said, hey, boss, you should probably wear this. We're going to the command center. I said I'd be honored to wear that. And then another one handed me the SWAT team badge of the unit that was protecting the area where Charlie was assassinated. I wore that with pride. These people can talk about my appearances all they want, but look at the results. The FBI, this FBI, my FBI, the one that Dan and I are building here under President Trump, is succeeding in ways that no FBI has ever done so before. So the institutionalists and the anonymous reporters from the swamp DC bureaucracy are the ones we are crushing. And that's how I know we're winning. And if Eric Swalwell wants to come online and talk about what jacket size I wear, I'm happy to send him a women's medium so him and Fang Fang can go out again.
And the Democrats are also, Mr. Director, supposedly going to investigate your use of the FBI jet because they're claiming you commandeered it for personal joyrides, going to a wrestling event, I guess, for your girlfriend. Is that true? And if so, if the Biden team did something like that, if it was true, I'd probably be hitting them tonight on television, but I thought I'd give you a chance to respond to that drive-by.
Yeah. It's simple. The FBI...
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy bill in half. They thought I got scammed.
It's simple. The FBI director, all FBI directors are required users of the FBI plane. They don't let me fly commercially. But my predecessors wasted millions of dollars because they were too lazy to drive an extra 20 minutes and go to Andrews Air Force Base. They used DC Reagan National as their personal hub, costing the taxpayer $4 million. I shut that policy off and mandated the use of government airfields. I've also used the airplane less than my prior two predecessors. And yes, I'm entitled to a personal life just like my other agency had counterparts with their partners. So do I support my girlfriend? Absolutely. And do I take trips with her? Absolutely. But when they're talking about raid jackets and Velcro and FBI plane use, they are not talking about the facts because they know this FBI is succeeding in ways prior leadership failed. And those cronies will always stick together and, of course, band together with their enemies to come in and attack us. And our mission here is to protect the American people. Let me tell you one more stat that the American people are going to love. This FBI is on course to deliver the lowest murder rate in modern history by double digits. The lowest murder rate in modern history by double digits. That's because we're out there in cities like Memphis leading the charge, in places like St. Louis and Miami and New York, and elsewhere across the country, delivering the mission first mindset and putting agents in power in the field to make these arrests. You cannot have these results if you focus on what the media wants to write about you or what the Democrats want to investigate. I am the only FBI director to turn over information related to travel, and that information shows one thing. I am a steward of the taxpayer dollars. My predecessors weren't. They couldn't drive 20 extra minutes on every trip. I'll drive an extra hour if it saves a taxpayer an extra few bucks.
Eric Swalwell has zero credibility on anything given his past. Mr. Director, our viewers also are they're chomping at the bit on why it took the Epstein files so long to be released. Any regrets there? Was that an unforced error? Should we have gotten them out earlier? Just get them all out there. Just thought I'd give you a chance to react to that.
Yeah, look, this FBI has produced 40,000 pages of documents to Congress. To put that in comparison, Ray put out 13,000 in 7 years, and Comey put out 3,000. We're committed to transparency. We're putting out as much as we can that is lawful and that is not prohibited by court orders. And those are the things the DOJ is fighting still with judges in court to make sure we can reveal everything without breaking the law. And that's what we're committed to doing. We're doing it as fast as we can, and we're going to keep doing it, not just on this, but you know about Arctic Frost because of this FBI's discovery of the illegal surveillance of senators and staffers. You know about Russiagate because of mine and Devin's work from back in day. And we're going to continue those investigations, and you bet we have ongoing criminal investigations on both those fronts. Because the guy who launched Russiagate, me, as a senior staffer back in House Intel, is now the director of the FBI, and I'm not going to end this mission without destroying and leveling the full weaponization that occurred before I got here.
Finally, I know you got to go, but are you hopeful about the future of the FBI, given that institutional resistance and given the fact that there are obviously still deep state actors working against you? Are you hopeful?
Sure. I'm more than hopeful. What I don't listen to is the swamp, and you know that better than anybody. What I do listen to is when I travel across the country and the communities of men and women around the country are coming up to us, not just the FBI employees, but the community saying, we have never felt safer. We appreciate the work you're doing, especially safeguarding our children and our youth and our national security and putting violent offenders in prison where they belong. I listen to the voices of Americans across the country. So does this administration. What I do not listen to and never will listen to is the witchcraft that goes on in Washington, D.C., because that's all they have left. And they're going to sell their pamphlets and try to raise money off of it. But my mission and this mission of the FBI has never been stronger, and we are going to execute it every single day. Hope is not a strategy. The mission of this FBI that we've laid out is.
Mr. Director, great to have you on. Don't be a stranger. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to.
All right, we're going to go to National Review about a critique of Senator Kelly, because Senator Kelly doesn't like anything from Trump. I think Senator Kelly is actually setting up for a presidential run. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Complete Multivitamin. The Complete Multivitamin is easy to digest, and it has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity, because these multivitamins are cofactors for those enzymes. And when you have enzymes that are working properly in your cell, your cells work better. So this is a foundational piece for my anti-aging protocol. Another part of the foundation of the anti-aging protocol is the probiotic. You can get it in veggie cap or in a powdered form. This one is the powdered form. I use the powdered form regularly because I take all these different powders like the Gladiator Barley, the collagen, the lignans, the Boomer Boost. So get the probiotic, either the veggie cap or the powdered version. Both are very high quality. And by taking the probiotic daily, I take it in the morning. So, but take it regularly, and that will help to reduce inflammation at the gut level, improve your gut biome. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. You'll sleep better. You'll get rid of brain fog. You will be able to consolidate memory because you're sleeping better. Your immune system will improve at the gut level. Your metabolism will improve. Even your skin will improve. Good health starts at the gut. Good health starts at the gut. So please, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. Now, some other great supplements that I have that you can stack with you can take them separately or stack them with the multivitamin and the probiotic. Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor is a very high quality neurostack. Gets rid of that brain fog, allows you to concentrate on tasks. You take it every day, drink it with filtered water. And over time, what's going to happen is you're going to improve your neuroplasticity. You're going to be thinking faster and your memory is going to be better. But you will feel the effects of this immediately, with the first day or two. So take it every day and it will allow you to concentrate and it'll get rid of that brain fog. Make sure that you filter your water, and you get even more benefits when you take an anti-aging protocol like I'm just suggesting right here, because a holistic approach will help to detoxify your body and improve your overall health, right? And what's that holistic approach? Proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, learning new things, spirituality or mindfulness, proper supplementation. It's very simple. Get the Clarity Factor. This is a very high quality neurostack. And Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to get into the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep that you need to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested. And when you do this regularly, your cortisol levels will start to go down. You'll have better memory. You'll have more energy. So please go to my store and get the Goodnight Formula. Proper sleep regularly will slow down the aging process. Also, if you are sleep deprived regularly, you are increasing your chances of early onset of dementia, and you're going to be aging faster. So it's really important to have proper sleep. So go to my store, get the Goodnight Formula, get the Clarity Factor, which is a great neurostack, the probiotics to help with your gut biome, and the complete multivitamin. Please go to my store, use discount 5. I want you to save some money. Use discount 5. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Hey everyone, I hate to say it, but Senator Mark Kelly has an insight.
When I heard the secretary say that they're going to pause immigration from third world countries, I mean, I take that as a message that they don't want brown people coming to the United States. And I find that disturbing.
Hey everyone, I'm Rich Leonard of National Review, and that's Mark Kelly going to the race card in record time, occasioned, of course, by this horrific DC National Guard attack carried out by an Afghan national. President Trump responds by saying he's going to permanently pause third world immigration, and Mark Kelly says that's racist. Now, of course, when you have a terroristic crime carried out by an immigrant, it makes sense to want to kick the tires of your immigration system and figure out what went wrong. Now, there'll be the debate about what constitutes a third world country. I think the natural place for the administration to start here is the 19 countries of concern that had already set out for so-called travel ban. These are countries where you have issues with vetting, you have issues with chronic visa overstays, and the basic problem is that you don't have a government on the other end that's competent, that's orderly, that's trustworthy to help you determine the background and the identity of a person seeking to come here. This is places like, yes, Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, like Somalia, like Haiti, like Equatorial Guinea. Now, Kelly says this is picking on brown people, which is absurd for many reasons. One of them is that even if you knock out all the immigration from those 19 countries of concern forevermore, the flow of immigrants into the United States would still be overwhelmingly from Latin America and Asia. It would still be overwhelmingly brown, to use Mark Kelly's term, because just not many immigrants come from Europe anymore. Now, more broadly, it makes sense to totally re-examine and reconsider how we do immigration.
And not just that, even if immigration is less from Europe, Europe isn't a third world. Countries in Europe aren't third world. It used to be third world, after World War II, but they've rebuilt. Some of them were third world after the fall of the Berlin Wall, but they rebuilt. So none of the countries in Europe are third world. But the bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. We have a lot of immigrants coming into the United States that hate America. They don't want to assimilate. Well, the whole point of immigration is to assimilate. It becomes a problem when you don't assimilate. And the thing is that, a lot of these countries that these immigrants are coming from, they're shitholes. So, if you're going to have just some sort of refugee type immigration policy, don't be surprised that you're bringing in people that are not going to be as productive.
Be some humanitarian element to our immigration policy. As a matter of national honor, we wanted our Afghan allies out of that country safely when the Taliban took over. This is how the DC Guard shooter got into this country in the first place. And there are truly desperate people around the world. We wanted to help some of them. But we should be honest, refugees are extremely expensive. By and large, they come here very poor.
Yep.
They have instant access to our welfare programs, and they very often have trouble assimilating. And we see this, even though he wasn't technically a refugee.
And the bottom line is this. Our veterans, they get less benefits than some of these immigrants that are coming into this country. Our elderly are getting less benefits than the illegals that are being housed in New York. Do you find that wrong? I do. Our veterans should be taken care of. Our elderly should be taken care of before anyone else. Period.
Shooter. He goes from Kandahar to Bellingham, Washington, near the Canadian border. That is a huge culture shock, even in the best of circumstances. But on top of that, he had mental health issues. He would isolate himself. He wasn't interested in taking his English courses, and it ends up in this catastrophe. By and large, the best arrangement for most refugees is to resettle someplace close to their home country, where they know the language, hopefully,
culture.
Where the culture is relatively familiar. And this is a crucial thing, because refugee status is not supposed to be a permanent condition, where it would be relatively easy for them to go home when circumstances allow. For our purposes, our immigration system should serve the national interest of the United States, not necessarily the interest of the immigrants. We need to put our interests first, a crucial distinction, and we need to put much more emphasis in our immigration system on high-skilled immigration through our tolerance so long for illegal immigration, through chain migration in the legal immigration system, where we bring in all the relatives of a legal immigrant into this country. We have put a huge emphasis on low-skilled immigration in a way that makes no sense. It's hard enough for a high school dropout born and raised in the United States to make it here now. It's that much harder for a high school dropout from, say, Guatemala, where the quality of the schools is much lower and that immigrant likely does not know English. This is not the early 20th century.
I think it's a debate if I think it's debatable if the public school system in the United States is better than Guatemala's public school system. I think in many regards it's the same.
Anymore, where to simplify in the Ellis Island era, you can have all these immigrants coming off boats and you just plug them into factory jobs and everything works out. And we didn't just depend, by the way, on jobs assimilating immigrants back then. There was a massive Americanization effort across all aspects of our society, the education system, government, even companies that were employing lots of immigrants put an emphasis on you need to love America and assimilate into America. And we've lost a lot of that ethic in the country at the moment. But we should be selecting for skills, for education levels, for job skills, for English proficiency. And by the way, Mark Kelly, I know what you're thinking. There are actually a lot of so-called brown people around the world who speak English. And we should be trying to get immigrants here who love this country and its system of government and are grateful for them. A great example, by the way, of how important skills are is that Nigerian immigrants, Nigeria, not a great country, very troubled place, Nigerian immigrants have done pretty well in the United States because they have higher levels of education than the native-born population. And by the way, we should want lower levels of immigration overall. Despite all the romantic rhetoric about the United States being a nation of immigrants, the level of immigration in this country has gone up and down over time. What's remarkable about the last 60 years, it's basically gone up without pausing or any decline for decades and decades, such that we are at the highest proportion of the foreign population in the United States ever. And one of the problems with such high levels of immigration is you get ethnic enclaves of the sort we have among the Somalis in Minnesota that change the politics and the culture of their locality. That's what we don't want. That's not good for assimilation. Now, I'm sure Mark Kelly would look at all this and say, oh, it's rank racism. I think for most Americans, it would represent common sense. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.
Unlike regular old hoodies, the bearskin hoodie is actually built for the outdoors, and it can stand up to the toughest conditions. Some folks come out here, they've spent thousands on gear that looks great on Instagram.
All right, let's talk about Bitcoin. All right. Now, the market is trading at 6,839 for the S&P 500. I still have a target year end at 6,850 to 6,900. VIX is trading at 16.37. Euro is trading at 1.16. Oil is trading with a 59 handle. Bitcoin is trading at 92,000 a coin. Japanese yen's trading at 155. So with VIX relatively stable, the yen stable, equities will drift up a little bit, just drift up a little bit. Now, oil seems to be having that resistance level at 60. But I think what will happen is that when we actually hit Venezuela, maybe it's this week, but it's got to be soon here. I think there is going to be a $4 spike in oil, maybe a $5 spike. So so most likely it'll break through that resistance level of 60. I'm noticing natural gas is ticking up. It's now at 4.995. Intraday high has been 5.016. So energy is starting to tick up. Now with natural gas, you got to remember the feedstocks for the electricity grid in the United States: coal and natural gas. Those are the two big ones. Then you have nuclear, right? You have hydropower, right? You have some solar. But the two big feedstocks, coal and natural gas. So as AI starts to crunch for these frontier models and more data centers are being built out, and we're going into the cold season in the United States, natural gas is probably going to be a little bit higher. All right, so let's take a look at any good comments about Bitcoin. You know, everyone, you know, there's lots of podcasters that talk about Bitcoin. You know, I try to stay away from those podcasters because they're either perma bears or perma bulls for Bitcoin. I like listening to the news networks, but they've been a little bit quiet on Bitcoin lately because Bitcoin dropped below 90 and it went into the 80 range. It hit to 81 and it started to go back up, and then it came back down. Now it's trading at 92,000. So around 95, 90, 93, 90, yeah, around 93 is a barrier right now. 93,000. All right, while I'm looking for a decent news clip on Bitcoin, because there's a lot of garbage out there, let's play China's Free Fall Begins. Oh, before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C and magnesium. This will help with your skin, boost up your immune system, and help with brain function. Magnesium and zinc boosts up that immune system and helps with brain function. You can take them together. And with magnesium, you're also increasing the efficacy of vitamin D3. You should be taking this every day to boost up that immune system and brain function, but especially for the winter season, because you need to boost up your immune system. And oh, by the way, there's something floating around in China right now. You want to be prepared. And the structural nano silver drops. Very high quality. You can get them in blueberry, in cherry, and also in honey and lemon. Get a few bags for your household. Be prepared at home, at work. You never know when you need them, but take them right away when you have that throat irritation. If you're around someone that's not feeling so well, you might want to take them prophylactically. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift. Don't you like free gifts? And by the way, we're in the holiday season. You need to buy gifts. Go to my store and get the gifts.
So today, I want to show you why China's economy is heading into deep waters in the final quarter of 2025, and why 2026 is shaping up to be very problematic. Now, before we begin, I want to say one thing. Every number you'll see is the official data. It has already been quote-unquote optimized and polished by the various departments of the government. And what we're looking at is the version after multiple cosmetic surgeries. So if these massaged numbers show collapse, you can imagine the reality behind them is much worse. All right, first things first, CCP's fiscal budget. Very interestingly, by the end of October, the overall deficit actually declined by 3%, or 264 billion yuan. So October year-to-date deficit stood at 8.57 trillion, smaller than the 8.84 trillion deficit at the end of September. So a month-to-month decline in the fiscal deficit is, shall we say, interesting. Did the CCP suddenly find a way to balance its budget? What exactly happened in October? To figure that out, let's look at revenue expenses month by month. Okay, so let's take a look at the revenue. Here's the full caliber fiscal revenue table. Before May, just take a look at the last column. Before May, the numbers were terrible, right? 4 out of the first 5 months showed negative year-on-year growth. Please note that January and February were lumped together as we didn't have a January data. Then Beijing turned to extreme tax extraction measures for May, squeezing the economy dry at every corner. You can watch my November 6th program for details. And revenue did improve. So from June to September, fiscal revenue showed 4 consecutive months of positive growth. But as predicted, in October, this desperate one last squeeze taxation strategy finally hit its limit. So October's year-on-year revenue growth turned negative. Even though the drop seems small at only 0.6%, it came despite increases in consumption tax, income tax, social security taxes, and also in VAT. So this tells us two disturbing truths. One, even when the government, in what we Chinese say, kill the chicken to get the eggs, so in a very aggressive tax strategy, revenue can no longer grow. By the end of Q4, when the tax base is fully exhausted, there will be nothing left to squeeze.
Yep.
And then the second truth is revenue decline will only get worse and accelerate faster, likely into double digits as the economy deteriorates and the economic engines shut down. There will be no more taxes the CCP can squeeze.
And when there's more internal stress because of the financial situation, President Xi may be losing support from the CCP party, the Communist Party. Well, he may, to try to consolidate power, make his move on Taiwan. See, that's the reason why it's so important to pay attention to the economics that are happening in China from a geopolitical perspective. Now, of course, if the economy is worse off in China, energy prices will be more suppressed because there's less need for energy. But I'm more worried about the war in the Pacific. And there is a military doctrine that when you're a rising power, but you are starting to have a problem economically, you may need to make your move because you may lose the opportunity, or the internal dynamics are such domestically that you need to consolidate power. And the best way to do that is to have a war. So this data is increasing the chances of a war in Taiwan.
The fiscal system will have no choice but to depend purely on money printing by the central bank. All right, now let's look at expenditures.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy bill in half. They thought I got scammed. But when I showed them my super low energy bill, they were blown away. Check that out. This is our current energy bill. This is our last energy bill. And as you can see, over a 56% difference. Hi guys, I just want to share a quick and simple technique that anyone can use to lower their energy consumption without changing their lifestyle. With this method, you can keep cooking, baking, gaming, running your dryer, wash at 90 degrees, and keep your heater running like you used to before. This method can essentially cut your energy bill in half by optimizing your home's energy grid. It lowers your energy bill by anywhere from 20% to 50% by bypassing the spikes in your home's current, which can lead to significant savings on your energy bills. It was discovered by Carl, an electrical engineer during last winter, when, like many of you, he was hit with ridiculously high electricity bills. His energy provider.
All right, now let's look at expenditures because that really gives us the real story. Let's see, in October, expenditures collapsed by a staggering 19%, one of the largest single-month drops ever recorded. Prior to that point, expenses kept growing. 4 out of the 10 months, expenditures had double-digit growth, right, as you can see. And then in October, it just suddenly swam to the other side and tanked by 19%. And that right there is the only reason the fiscal deficit shrank in October. We have a revenue that fell 0.6% and expenditures falling 19%. Now, here's the question. Was the CCP suddenly enthusiastic about austerity or fiscal austerity? No. It's much more likely that local governments hit a cash flow wall in October. CCP is not known for cutting expenses on their own. In a centrally controlled system, they cut only when they're forced to. So they were scrambling for money and slashing every cash outflow they could because they have cash flow problems. So this dramatic drop in expenditures is a clear warning that fiscal cash flow is snapping, and there's no way to repair it because it's not normal budget cutting. Although fiscal deficit declined in October, it's not a good sign. It means the various levels of governments are seriously run out of money. And since fiscal spending is in free fall, fixed asset investment must follow because government projects were or are the only thing keeping investment numbers alive. So now let's take a look at fixed asset investment. If you look at this trend, right, the growth rates for the past decade, if you just glance at the last column on the right, I mean, 2025 isn't the worst year. 2019 and 2023 were all double-digit contraction years. So if you look at year-to-year comparisons, 2025 isn't bad. However, if I showed you the monthly trend of 2025, you will see the problem. In the beginning months of the year, there were still some growth. But after June, as the extreme tax measures intensified, investment numbers began to deteriorate, and they're in the red. Ordinary people were squeezed dry. Private investment was dying, and only government-funded projects were holding the investment tables together. But by October, with fiscal expenditures collapsing, fixed asset investment dropped by 15.5%. And this is massive because it's even worse than the record 13% drop in 2019. The worst here was 2019's 13% drop. But in October, we saw 15.5 point drop. Now let's take a look at the financial side, the heart of China's economy. Now at this stage, China is essentially a debt-driven economy. Debt expansion is the only remaining engine. If debt growth stalls, the economic heart stops beating. And here's what the financing table shows. For 2025. So up until July, China could still expand credit, barely keeping things limping along. But starting in August, new financing began to shrink. August was down 15.4%, September down 6.2%, and October, that's 42.2% down in financing activities. This is dramatic. This is nearly cut in half. It's a near total collapse. Now let's move on to real estate. For most people, for most Chinese people, the economy really means one thing, the real estate. So let's take a look at the monthly trend for 2025. Now these are million square meters, right? So these are the monthly numbers. The decline remained in the single digit during the first half. And then the single digit decline were still enough to make some Chinese to believe that sales have bottomed out. Prices can't fall any further, and a rebound is coming. But then by October, sales plunged to almost 20% in square meters. So in terms of value, it's even more. It plunged more than 25%. Now, developers are already near a cash flow collapse because December and January are heavy cash out months. They are when project payments are due, when old debts must be rolled over, and when new loans require paying off old debts first. So under collapsing sales, remaining developers are almost certain to suffer collective cash flow breakdowns. Let's move on to exports. All years, officials and state media have bragged about how resilient China's exports were. The fact that the exports were holding up despite the US-China trade tensions. If you look at the monthly trend, exports enjoyed an uptick throughout the year until, like I said, October, when it turned red. Right? It was a turning point in October when China's customs data, its calibrated export growth was down in the red territory. It was a negative 1%. In September, it was still 8+%. So from October onward, China's export sector will shrink rapidly. This is because exporters are not making money. So from January to October, export volume is up 18%. Export value was almost 8%, but price index fell 9%. So what does that mean? It mean profit margins are near zero. And worse, November, there were several major developments in November. For example, Tesla has announced that China-made parts used in the North American market will drop to zero by 2027. GM announced that it's ending global procurement of China-made components by 2027. Apple, we know that 80% of AirPods, Apple Watch, and MacBook productions are moving to India and Vietnam. Starbucks, Burger King, Häagen-Dazs, and Decathlon, these brands are selling their China businesses. In addition to that, Central Asia's 5 countries signed the long-term mineral and energy deals with the United States, bypassing China. So global supply chains are not diversifying, they are decoupling. So when you line up every indicator we just went through today, the conclusion writes itself. October wasn't just another data point, it was the breaking point. The fiscal tank is empty, investment is collapsing, financing has frozen, the property market is cracking wide open, exports are losing their last lifeline, and the only thing holding the system together is a central bank printing money. So that's what the early stage of an economic freefall looks like. I think China is heading into the most difficult period since the reform era began.
Nostalgia hits me hard enough.
I agree with her, but she didn't get to the point that President Xi is going to have domestic problems, which he will need to find a way to consolidate power. And to consolidate power, you do a war. So the war in Taiwan, that probability has increased. All right, we're going to go to the Schwab network and listen in on NVIDIA and Bitcoin. This was earlier today. This was published earlier today.
Let's bring in Kevin Green, senior markets correspondent, right away to help set up the action today. All right, KG, we're here at the middle of the week this week, and it looks like maybe there's some tentative or cautious optimism. How would you characterize the sentiment in the market?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if you're looking at the VIX complex here, we're sitting at around a 16 VIX, so an implied move of about 1%. But if you're looking at the at-the-money straddle for the E-mini S&P futures, you're only pricing in around a 30-point move either to the upside or downside. So the market is definitely showing some complacency. And yesterday was a little bit of a tough and choppy trade, to say the least here. Obviously, the S&P 500 was able to hold up. But if you look at the Russell, it pretty much failed the last hour of the day. So you start seeing this rotation trade taking place again. But instead of actually rotating and broadening out, you're starting to see it concentrate just a little bit more, with technology stocks as well as semiconductors leading the way yesterday when you're looking at some of the industries that actually have a meaningful impact on the S&P 500. Now, today we will have some economic data. The ADP report will come out around 14 minutes from now. That could actually move the markets, especially move the yield markets overall here. But we do have the seasonality in our favor. We do have the Fed meeting coming up. But right now, the volatility markets are pricing in a fairly low shot that we will see some volatility. Now, at the end of the day, once volatility is a little bit low, it can also re-rate aggressively higher as well. We have to be mindful of that. But what I'm looking at this morning, what's really kind of pushing us higher, is NVIDIA. NVIDIA is trading at $184 right now. It closed at around $181.50 or so. So we are seeing that push up a tad bit, and that AI trade is still gaining a little bit of traction here, especially when you're looking at the fuel cell companies and also the utility companies like an Oklo.
Reclaiming some levels that some technicians said to watch out for, it reclaiming those levels and continue to push higher from there. You mentioned the tech trade, and there recently been commentary. You noticed this as well, the decoupling between crypto and tech in particular. But crypto is moving higher and regaining some ground. We're looking at Bitcoin higher right now. What's your take when you look across crypto markets?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you are seeing some individuals buying the dip. Out yesterday, or actually the day before, on Monday, we actually did see, cryptocurrencies kind of come back, retest some key areas of support. If you're looking at the Bitcoin futures, that's sitting around 85,000, and then individuals started buying in for right now here. And we are in oversold territories in a lot of metrics. So are we seeing some technical buying taking place? That could be the case here. You are seeing also positive inflows into the IBIT ETF as well. That actually did occur yesterday. So that also is providing a little bit of
confidence that maybe a near-term bottom is in place. And this is going to be a risk-on / liquidity indicator. We are seeing some buyers stepping in. Hopefully that's going to fuel maybe some speculative buying when it comes to the S&P 500. But you still would like to see that decoupling taking place. You actually did see Strategy get some price target upgrades today as well. That's also a little bit unique, probably giving some confidence for the crypto bulls. So once again, overall, I think the market is really just trying to search for that new narrative. And right now, we just don't have that. We have the economic data upcoming here over the next couple of days that could actually reshape the market's narrative for the better, especially if the data comes in favor of the Fed.
I personally think that the crypto market is too manipulated. There's going to be a major test. They're going to retest the 100K. If that fails, this Bitcoin is going to 70, 71. So this is going to creep up to about 100 and retest. I don't think the institutional investors are there. I don't think that the retail investors are there. You have the whales, but you also have this really convoluted strategy, trading strategy by strategy, MicroStrategy, that he's trying to corner the market. He's trying to, he's trying to be the central bank of crypto, of Bitcoin. Those types of strategies, they don't work well. They usually break down because of financial markets are complex systems and you can't corner them. It's not a closed system. So if MicroStrategy falls, if it fails and they have to start dumping Bitcoin, you're talking about a major liquidity issue. There's not going to be buyers. It's going to keep on dropping. So this 100,000 level is a strong psychological barrier. Now, yes, if you listen to some of the talking heads of Bitcoin, they said that by year end it was going to be at 150. First it was 137, then it was going to be at 150. There were even some talk that it was going to be at 275. At year end, it may be at 80. So, but I think there's going to be another test of 100. It'll probably break, go to 110, and then come back down. All right. There is I don't think there is a confidence level. Why should Bitcoin go up? Why? Most of the players are whales. The retail investors have been burned when it went from 125 all the way down to, the 80s just recently. And when you get burned like that, you don't go back in. The ETF wrappers, especially if they're leveraged, aren't working because there's too much leverage decay. And all right, but he said, well, maybe the BlackRock, there's inflows in the ETF. I think that's short-lived. So it would be nice to know what the short ETFs are compared to the long ETFs by BlackRock. Or is it Blackstone? But either way, but the point that I'm making is that Bitcoin, it's a manipulated market. And it's lost the confidence of many institutional investors and retail investors. So if there aren't people out there that are willing to buy at 100, 110, 125, how's it going to go up? Oh, the value of the coin, really? What about computation getting more advanced, where it can solve problems at a much faster rate? Then that will mean there will be more coins available in a shorter amount of time. I don't trust Bitcoin. I don't trust it. I think it's a manipulated market.
Providing a potential cut in January.
Yeah, I think about, you mentioned the ADP report. The last time that we got the ADP report, it was that week that it was unclear if the government was going to shut down, and it did, and we didn't get the job report. So
Another standpoint of Bitcoin is its correlation to the Mag 7. If the AI bubble happens and bursts, if that AI bubble bursts, Bitcoin's probably going to sell off, because there's so many people that are invested in the Mag 7 that they're going to need to go to cash, and they'll drop Bitcoin like a rock.
We're at a week where it's the ADP report that really matters. Let's get into some of the earnings that you're across. Taking a look at Marvell, those shares are, jumping this morning off the back of its results. What are some of your takeaways here?
Yeah, so initially when you actually saw the reaction from the market, it was kind of mixed to say the least here, but the commentary on the conference call really did boost the shares higher. We did actually see revenue coming in for Q3 at $2.08 billion. She was looking for $2.06 billion, and the adjusted earnings per share did exceed the street's expectations, coming in at 76 cents. She was looking for 75 cents. And when you're looking at data center revenue, that grew by 38% on a year-over-year basis, which slightly above Wall Street's expectations, but if they're able to consistently hit that type of number, that comp on a year-over-year basis, you could make the case that this company is trading relatively cheap compared to its peers within this space. Now, the conference call is where we actually got the updated guidance. It is the data center guidance that actually did shock the street here. They are actually looking at data center revenue to grow by 25% on a year-over-year basis in next fiscal year, and that's excluding that acquisition of Celestial AI, which they did announce yesterday formally here. So there is demand when it comes to these custom ASIC chips. That's exactly what they really focus on, the designing of those chips. And if they are seeing that demand, once again, that could also drive top line growth. And if they're able to hold their margins where they are at right now, that should also then boost free cash flow, which is why the streets is definitely optimistic. So we're seeing the shares up, let's say around 8%, 9% or so. Let's see if this actually does hold here. But a really good report, especially when you look at the guidance and the commentary of the conference call.
Yeah, there's clearly a win that it needed, because it's been an underperformer year to date, whether you're looking at it, compared to the S&P 500 or to peers, and on a year-over-year basis, really not much movement there. So it will be rewarding some, I guess, patient investors here today. Let's talk CrowdStrike. I've seen shares fluctuating off the back of its results, but when you dive into those, what are some of your takeaways here?
Yeah, I mean, last time that I checked, CrowdStrike was only down about 1%, so well within that market maker move. When you're looking at the report, it wasn't anything that was shocking to the upside, as well as nothing that was really deteriorating within the internals of this company here. They did actually report Q3 revenue at $1.23 billion. It's a 22% increase on a year-over-year basis, slightly above the street's expectations, and the adjusted earnings per share came in at 96 cents. Street was looking for 94 cents here. They did raise their guidance up, and it was above the street's expectations, but once again, not a massive re-rating higher when it comes to their guidance. So maybe hitting that whisper number for the street here. Net new ARR, their outlook for the second half of fiscal year 2026, they are looking at around 50% growth on a year-over-year basis. But once we start seeing the normalization of that ARR, they're looking at around 20% growth, because once again, the year-over-year comps are going to be a little bit difficult given the fact that we did have that outage around this time last year. So overall, it was a good report. Nothing too shocking here. A 1% drawdown to the downside, not that big of a deal if you're a long-term shareholder. But once again, well within that market maker move that was expected here.
Okay, so let's talk the levels that you're looking for on the S&P 500 today.
All right, let's pivot over to job diversity is a necessary backbone for every economy. This is by Bloomberg.
Near term, no, employment's going to be on the weak side. Companies are still really focused on their profit margins, but employment's a lagging indicator, quite frankly. The government did crowd out employment earlier over the past couple of years. The healthcare industry crowded out the private sector, education. So we're kind of unwinding that right now.
Right.
So that's also a headwind, along with the private sector still a little bit focused on protecting their profit margins.
When do we get back to job formation that doesn't involve healthcare workers and bartenders?
Probably in mid-2026. You're seeing green shoots for the labor markets. You have profits improving across the board, both S&P 500, S&P 600, Russell 2000. So you're getting the breadth of now profits. Companies are willing to spend. They always first spend on technology to further improve their productivity and their profitability. And then you get employment. Employment is a lagging indicator. So you're setting the stage for employment as you move into the second, third quarter of 2026. And you are getting some indications that it is incrementally improving. Small businesses have stopped firing, which is, again, the first step in getting job hiring as we go through 2026.
We've had a little bit of hindsight here, Nancy, with tariffs. What happened with tariffs? How did they kind of impact the economy? How are they impacting the economy?
Yeah. So first, they are a tax. Tariffs are a tax. How much? As a share of GDP, you're about over 10% as a hit, up to 2% at the beginning of the year. And it's really a regressive tax on that lower end consumer, on small.
This is a thing that I don't like about these talking heads talking about tariffs. When you're talking about revenue coming into the government, it's either taxes, tariffs, or debt issuance. Now, when you have tariffs, not all of the price is going to be absorbed by the consumer, the end consumer. Taxes, depending on the type of tax, is annually. And we're taxed to death already. In debt issuance, you have to pay an interest on the debt that you're issuing. It's usually a 10 or 20-year debt issuance, sometimes a 7, a 5-year, but either it's multiple years, typically. Now, would you prefer to have a tariff, a tax, regular taxes on your, let's say, federal income tax or state tax, or debt issuance? Now think about this very carefully. With a tariff, yes, there are some items that you have to buy that's non-discretionary, but most items that you buy are discretionary items. So you just don't buy it. And then the price goes down. You can't get away with taxes. So they got you there. So tariffs, you have more control as a consumer. Taxes, not so much. And it's even worse when there's debt issuance because it leads to inflation in most cases. So what is better for you? Taxes, tariffs, or debt issuance? Actually, tariffs are better for the end consumer. Corporations don't like it because they have to absorb more costs. And they can't push it to the end consumer all the time. So corporations prefer debt issuance because who's really paying that? Mostly the taxpayer. Now corporations pay tax too. But you listen to the ones that complain about tariffs, it's the multinational corporations that complain more than the people. Now, when you're talking about debt issuance, who's complaining? Well, the people don't really pay attention to it. They only see it through inflation. So at first, they don't pay attention. And then once they see the inflation, then they're going to their congressman or senator and saying, wait a minute, taxes are too high, but the debt is too high. But you want all these social programs. Well, we can't really afford it. We'll just issue more debt. See, if you really pay attention to American prosperity, there is a mixture here that will work well. A little bit of debt issuance, reasonable taxation that's not burdensome, prudence in the way Congress spends money, and a tariff policy. Those three ingredients mixed in the proper way will lead to a prosperous economy.
Or on smaller businesses, There have been some offsets where some durable good prices have gone up, other service prices have gone down, some food prices have gone down, but net, they have kept inflation. They have kept inflation sticky this year.
Going forward here, I mean, I'm looking at some of the early retail sales we got from Black Friday, Cyber Monday, whatever it's called, and so on. Seems like the consumer is still okay out there. How do you view the consumer?
So a consumer out of a slump, consumer spending always turns up. I went back and looked at all cycles since 1960. Consumer spending always turns up before jobs turn up. Okay. Why? They're highly cyclical. Interest rates are down. Banks are willing to make loans. They're refinancing their credit card debt. They're using HELOC, going from something over 20% to something less than 10%. So it's not jobs that actually drive consumer spending. It's the Fed. And then as you go into 2026, we're going to get a big booster shot to disposable income from these tax refunds.
As with folks across the nation, we welcome all of you finishing out the year. Are we drowning in outlooks? Sam Rowe has like 47 outlooks to read just today. Okay. He's in charge of reading outlooks. We listen to Sam Rowe, R.O. Look for him on Substack as well. But with Nancy Lazar, we have someone steeped in the linkage here of a nation's history into our economy. I look at Ken Burns' Magisterial American Revolution. There's a little bit of grievance there, which they highlight, versus just simply, Philadelphia against the king. There's a little more complicated than that. The Edelman Trust Barometer this year, the high level of grievance towards government, business, and the rich. And it's this daily grievance and agony within the news media. You fought that for decades.
Yeah.
Is it morning in America and we just don't know it?
Oh, I think that's been unfolding for 15 years. We've called it the U.S. manufacturing renaissance. Started back in 2010. Middle America was our favorite emerging market. You're seeing it certainly within unemployment rates around individual states that are more business friendly. So, and current policies certainly are going to reinforce bringing back blue collar jobs to the United States. And so we're quite excited. At first, the private sector started back in 2010. The corporate tax cut in 2017 reinforced it. And now full capex depreciation is another major booster shot for the kind of reindustrialization of the United States, which is a necessary backbone for every economy. I worry about Germany, Europe in general, by allowing China to come in and dump cars. You need a diverse source of jobs because we have a diverse labor force, and we need a big. Consumers need to have a choice of what kind of job. Not everyone wants to go to college. Nothing wrong with blue collar jobs. Nothing wrong with
Nothing wrong with blue collar jobs, Paul. Mrs. Keenan says we're hanging wallpaper. Have you priced out wallpaper hangers?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's positions at Mount Sinai that are making that.
So I mean, give us a sense of kind of the labor market here, because it seems solid. The unemployment rate, the headline number that we all look at, seems fine. Seems kind of full employment-ish. Is it as strong as it looks?
Well, under the hood, you have had some significant layoff announcements here in the fourth quarter, and so there is a chance that the unemployment rate does grind higher as we go into the first part of 2026, maybe around 5%. Some of the leading indicators point to about 5%, but that's historically, as you just said, still not high. Mm-hmm. And the labor market is a lagging indicator, and as we go through 26, I think it is incrementally going to start to heal.
The holiday season means a house full of people all up in your internet, but with 100%.
All right, let's listen in to Yahoo Finance talking about Code Red that Sam Altman from OpenAI has sent over AI competition. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the olive leaf extract. This is a dual purpose supplement that will help with your cardiovascular health and help to boost up your immune system. Super important. It brings down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile. Take it every day. And vitamin D3, you should be taking this every day, but especially in the winter. Vitamin D3 acts as a cofactor for gene expression, so your cells perform properly. It helps to get the cell to go into apoptosis if it's infected. That's why it's so important to take during the winter season. And vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. Do resistance training and you get denser bone. So please go to my store and get this very high quality vitamin D3 and get the collagen. Collagen is dual purpose. It's going to help with your skin, your nails, your hair, your musculature, your bone density, your joints, and your cartilage. Also take vitamin C with magnesium with this. It'll cross-link and improve your dermal layer. Drink about 32 to 64 ounces of filtered water a day. Take the collagen and the vitamin C from my store to improve that dermal layer of your skin. Please go to my store, get this very high quality collagen. The typical amino acid profile of this collagen is shown on the screen here. This is a month supply. You should do this every day and get healthy. So a great stack is to take the collagen, the D3, and the olive leaf extract. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's find out about Code Red.
Gemini 3 AI model last month has driven user growth and has also prompted OpenAI CEO Sam Altman to reportedly declare a quote code red to improve the quality of its chatbot, ChatGPT. Our next guest says that has also touched off a civil war within AI, further carving a divide between those supporting the Google complex and the OpenAI complex. Joining me now, Michael O'Rourke, Jones Trading Chief Market Strategist. Mike, great to see you again. Thanks for sticking with us. So, we have talked before about your belief that indeed AI is trading in a bubble here. And we've gotten more headlines like this where there is more competition within the AI space. It seems like bulls have sort of been betting on everything to win, right? That it's a big enough pie that everybody will get a slice. Is that the way that people should be thinking about it?
I don't think that's the way people should be thinking about it. But we've developed this pattern in the past 15 years or so, is that when a leader comes about in the technology space, it seems to be a winner-take-all proposition. And so investors are willing to pay extremely high multiples, especially in the early stages, because you're expecting the company to own the space in the long term and you're going to make it up as time passes. But I think what the events of the past few weeks have shown, where Google came out of nowhere, out of left field with Gemini 3, all of a sudden it leapfrogged OpenAI to have the best performing LLM, and then in parallel to that, they have their own TPUs that's where they trained Gemini 3 on, and that's performed really well. Of course, they're a lot cheaper than NVIDIA's GPUs. And while all these companies, right now, there's of course room for all these companies in the space that's growing, but it does make you think, well, obviously success breeds competition. And what you're going to see is I would say it's almost a blood sport between the largest, most capitalized organizations in the world finally competing with one another. And that's where the risk is, because they're going to be trying to outspend each other and outdo one another in order to win this space. And traditionally, they've generally had weaker competition, not the largest organizations in the world. So what we have seen in the markets as of late, with the NASDAQ pulling back, right? It hasn't been a huge pullback from the highs. It's something like 3%. Does that bring a little more rationality into this? Or do you think that there is still a long way down potentially to go? I think it brings a little more rationality in the sense of what we've seen is rotation into Google and Broadcom, as there's been some profit taking in NVIDIA and the likes of Oracle, who's partnered with OpenAI. So you're seeing rotation, which is healthy, because at least investors are recognizing that there are risks that someone else can come out, again, another player or someone else can come in and make a big move somewhere. And that's good that investors are at least acknowledging there's risk out there. But in the same respect, we're pricing in many cases, forward earnings for the next several years based on forecast projections. I mean, I think one of the market's biggest, or investors' biggest problems with, with everything that OpenAI has done is having $1.4 trillion in spending commitments that are integrated in the order books of all the major technology firms in the world, for that matter, and they're unsure if OpenAI is going to be able to make good on those commitments, and then all of a sudden you have something like Google jump ahead, it raises further doubts. So I think that's where the risk is. Yeah, we know the earnings estimates are good, we know the forecasts are good, but everything has to be taken with a big grain of salt at this point in time, because the landscape shifted in the past couple of weeks.
Well, and into this environment, it looks like the Fed might cut rates, right, at its meeting. And in past situations where we have a somewhat speculative environment, even if the rate cut is expected, like, is there a risk of putting fuel on the fire here?
I think there's a little bit of a risk. Honestly, the Fed has kind of made itself an irrelevant institution at this point in time. We have a massive balance sheet, which we finally have into some type of ample reserves balance, but it's still double the level it was, prior to the pandemic. So when things like economic data and events in the economy don't really matter to the Fed anymore, because again, we've had 2 insurance rate cuts. Now we're thinking of doing a 3rd insurance rate cut. The current unemployment rate is still lower than 74-75% of monthly readings over the past 60-70 years. It's just that the Fed's made itself irrelevant, and that is why changing the Fed probably will be a good thing, next year. So it adds a little fuel to the fire, but I think that's a secondary factor here.
Fair enough, Mike. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
We await the story today that OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is issuing some form of code red warning to his teams, basically wants to pick up the pace on development. What bothers me here, Tom, is that this company underpins the AI trade. It's linked up with AMD, it's linked up with NVIDIA, and if OpenAI is going to fall behind here, what does that mean to the broader AI ecosystem and the various trades that investors have fallen in love with?
Brian, you hit the nail on the head, and this is what matters to investors in this story, right? The Google Gemini AI model is a huge deal because it threatens to make OpenAI and ChatGPT substantially less relevant. And here's why that matters for all of us. ChatGPT, OpenAI, has committed to spending over $1 trillion in the coming years to fund data center build out. If all of a sudden their revenue prospects dim because Google, which already has a presence everywhere, is going to become the dominant AI model player, then the outlook for ChatGPT just got a lot worse. That means they're not going to have the money to fund all of these commitments they've made, commitments which stocks have already rallied on. So if OpenAI, this is absolutely code red. This is code red for OpenAI. It's also code red for the AI enthusiasm trade. We need to see ChatGPT step up. Otherwise, it's not just OpenAI in the private market that risks dropping a lot. It's the whole AI ecosystem, and that would be a problem for the S&P 500.
Tom, if this is in fact code red for the broader AI ecosystem, I'm going to assume that a lot of people have already missed a pretty substantial move in Google. I'm going to swipe it off to the side for a second. Is this the moment where you go back to a name like Meta that is not reliant on OpenAI, that is spending billions of dollars in CapEx? The street didn't like that a couple weeks ago when it reported earnings, but here's a company growing its core Instagram business, Facebook, and going to be a major player in AI, and doesn't necessarily need an OpenAI.
Yes, I think so. And that's what I think, again, this is such a big deal with Google stepping out with Gemini, is that you look at these well-capitalized mega cap tech companies, they don't need to worry about finding funding to pay for all the things they've committed to. They can do that from cash flow and from a very, very favorable debt market. So I do like Meta as a tangential from a Google.
And as over to you, what concerns me here amongst everything that I was just mentioning is a company like AMD. They came out a couple months ago, signed a big deal with OpenAI. The stock shot up. Immediately you thought AMD is going to be breaking billions of dollars from OpenAI. They're also going to have an investor in the form of OpenAI. I believe it's a potential 10% stake over time. That bothers me. If OpenAI can't deliver right now, if you're an A&D shareholder, you got to be quaking in your boots.
Yes, and look, when you saw that the stock reaction when the report on the Google and Meta potential deal with their TPUs, the Google AI chips, you saw that NVIDIA fell on that day, and AMD did as well. The fact that you have Alphabet or Google that is, it has its TPU chips, which they don't necessarily, okay, fine, they don't compete directly with NVIDIA's GPUs, but certainly this is sort of a diversification play for them. And the fact that you also have their Google Gemini, which has been integrated into Google. You know, what's very interesting is that the street had been concerned that ChatGPT was going to displace Google search. Yet Google was able to integrate Google Gemini into its Google search, and it still has the best of both worlds, because if you're going to use Google search, you're going to probably use it to look for a local handyman, right? And that still goes with their ad part of their business. But with their Gemini, you're looking at it for more deep research, for more helping out with term papers, whatever that may be. But nonetheless, I mean, this is Google firing at all cylinders, and this is sort of having a ricochet effect on the rest of the AI players.
All right, we're going to go to we might go to the Hill, but no, I think we're going to go to Fox Business first, talking about Americans may soon pay no income tax under tariff plan. Do you remember what I said? There's 3 ways to get revenue into the government. As a citizen, it's better to actually have tariffs than income tax or debt issuance. But for a vibrant economy, you probably need a little bit of everything, right? But we pay way too much in taxes. And a big part of that is interest payments to debt issuance. So before we play that video from Fox, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will help with your mitochondrial health. The first 4 B vitamins boost up your ATP levels because they are part of the electron transport chain within the mitochondria to produce ATP. So your cells will perform better, your cellular metabolism will perform better, and vitamin B complex has B12. B12 helps to protect your neurons. So it's really important to take vitamin B complex every day if you're 40 years of age or older. And digestive enzyme complex, another great supplement to take, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. This will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, reduce the load on your pancreas, and allow you to digest with less stress in your digestive system. Digestive enzyme complex also has bromelain, which is fibrinolytic that helps to break up clots. And digestive enzyme complex has glycoprotein digestive enzymes, proteolytic enzymes, that will allow you to break up those glycoproteins. Super important. Why? Because back in the crazy phase of 2020 and the aftershock, there were a lot of spike proteins floating around. You needed to break those up. And those spike proteins came from 2 different sources, natural and unnatural. Digestive enzyme complex breaks those glycoproteins. And that's the reason why I said to take the digestive enzyme complex in 2020. It's fibrinolytic through bromelain, and it has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins. So it behooves you to take digestive enzyme complex to help with your pancreatic health, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. But it also helps to take this during the fall and the winter season. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin B complex and the digestive enzyme complex, stack them together, and get healthy. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video.
As 2026 will be the year for Main Street. Watch. been a great year on the economy, but the best is yet to come. The tens of trillions of dollars that have come in investment, but you also insisted on the 4 benefits for working people. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. So as a result, in 2026, we are going to see very substantial tax refunds in the first quarter. So the best way to address the affordability crisis is to give Americans more money in their pockets, which is what this bill has done.
Oh, that's interesting. Anthony Chan is an economist and he joins me now. You get all those tax rebates early next year. That's highly stimulative for the economy, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, the average person will get $1,000 more than they got the prior year. If you get a family of 4, 2 workers and 2 children, they're going to get $1,800 more. This is not getting publicized. So when they see that extra money, guess what they're going to do? They're going to spend it.
Right. So that's think economic growth 3% in the early part of next year?
Well, we know that the One Big Beautiful Bill is going to help with capital spending because it's 100% expensive. So that means capital spending can go up anywhere from 3% this year to as much as 7%. That's about 14% of real GDP. So that'll add about 0.8% to real GDP growth. The consensus for 2026 is 1.8%. So if you add another 0.8%, that's a 2.6% growth. We will be growing faster in 2026, according to the consensus, compared to 2025. So yes, an improvement in economic growth. We got to be excited, Stuart. I hope you're excited.
I am. I'd love to see economic growth like that. That'd be good for everybody. Floats all boats. That's a great thing about it. One more for you. President Trump, once again, you saw this, floating the idea of eliminating the federal income tax. Watch this.
We're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people. And I believe that at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous that you're not going to have income tax to pay.
Okay, they're taking a lot of money from tariffs that can replace the revenue from income tax. Therefore, some way down the road, you can get rid of the income tax. Is that realistic?
I would love to see that.
Yeah, we'd all love to see it. Is it
But if
realistic?
you look at the numbers from the Treasury Department, they've collected $220 billion worth of tariffs so far. But if you look at some of the estimates from Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, or Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, they're estimating that we can collect anywhere from $300 to as much as $500 billion a year. Now, federal taxes collected about $2.9 trillion a year. So if we raise tariffs another 4 or 5 times what they are right now, the numbers then make sense. At these levels, we're not there yet. But as you said earlier, Stuart, it's a work in progress. So that means you can reduce federal taxes. And I can't find one person on this planet that wouldn't be excited paying lower federal taxes. Or zero, even better.
But it just seems like such a distant dream. Everybody would like to eliminate federal income taxes, but can we actually do it?
Stuart, be a little optimistic.
Nobody believes.
One step at a time. Initially, lower the federal taxes. Over time, if those revenues go up, then you can get there. Can we get there in the next 6 months? Of course not. But we are moving in that direction. So be a little bit more optimistic, Stuart.
I shall try. Believe me, actually, I shall try. Andy, you're all right? Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to go to the Hill, and it's going to be talking about Ivy League schools soaring in disability accommodations. All right, so let's see what that's about. This was just released. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol is something that I've been taking for decades. It's an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to help the health of your mitochondria. It's going to boost up your ATP levels so your cells perform better. Resveratrol also helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. So your tissues will be healthier. In certain tissues, it can regenerate with adult stem cells. So your actual average age in the tissue, based on telomere lengths or based on methylation, is actually younger if you get rid of those senescent cells. Resveratrol helps with the anti-aging and longevity. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol also helps with the basal layer of your skin, super important. If you stack this with C60, you get major benefits for your skin. And resveratrol stacks well with other supplements that I have, like Clarity Factor and NAD Plus, or the C60, the Boomer Boost. This is a great supplement to take, but you get the max benefits of it if you stack it with some of the products that I just mentioned. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Another great stack with resveratrol is ubiquinol. So use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. But resveratrol, super important to add to your stack to slow down the aging process. And I've been taking resveratrol for decades.
The number of students who are registered as having a disability is skyrocketing at prestigious universities in the U.S. That is according to an article from The Atlantic that's been getting a lot of traction online.
Now, disabled students can receive a variety of special accommodations from their schools. Many of those accommodations are considered standard and are not controversial, but others, such as giving the students extra time to complete exams, have become a point of contention by those who believe.
This issue with schools, especially Ivy League, but also in the professional schools like law and in the medical schools. What is happening, and even engineering, you'll see this also in engineering. The students today, what they do is they go to a doctor, usually a psychiatrist, state that they have ADHD or some sort of spectrum disorder or whatever. They get on medication. Usually it's Retinol or not Retinol, some sort of ADHD medication. And what happens is that when they're taking their test, they're given like 20 minutes or an hour long extra because they're diagnosed with some sort of attention deficit disorder. And these students are just playing games to get extra time. Now, my thinking is this: if you're in a profession like engineering, in law, or even in medicine, and especially in medicine, if you have a student that's coming in that has an attention deficit disorder, and they have to be medicated to be able to perform, then maybe they shouldn't be in that field. But there's a lot of these students that are overdiagnosed by their psychiatrist. And they're playing games. And this is not just at the college level or at the professional school level, but it's also happening in high school because of grades, performance on the SAT or your GPA. It's so important to get perfect on everything just to get into a good school. And so there's a lot of stress and what families do is that they play this attention deficit game. Now, if the kid has attention deficit, maybe they shouldn't be in the professional schools. If they can't perform without being medicated, then maybe there's a problem there. Maybe there's a problem. Maybe fix the problem before they go to the professional schools. But is it fair? Is it fair for these students that are on this medication compared to other students that aren't? No, it's not. It's not fair. What I saw in medical school was that about 30% of the student body is on attention deficit medication. And they get these provisions where they take the test and they get an hour more or 30 minutes more, depending on the length of the test. They get special provisions. Isn't that bullshit? Isn't that bullshit? It is. And most of these students, they're playing games. They're doing it on purpose. Because they can't compete. They can't really compete in the real world. They have to play games.
They're being exploited. The article reads in part, quote, professors now struggle to accommodate the many students with an official disability designation, which may entitle them to extra time.
I meant to say
students. They're playing games. They're playing games. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. Absolutely not. I mean, there's a reason why that, let's say if you are a special ops individual in the military, you can't be on medication. You can't be on, you can't be on psychotropic medications. What happens when you're in the field? When you're in war and you don't have your medication? Oh, you can't fight? See, this is a problem here. This is that we're over-medicating, over-diagnosing students, and then also students are playing games to be able to get special provisions during their test. And this is rampant, rampant. This didn't happen, this wasn't in existence in the 1990s. This, early 1990s or the 80s. This started really ramping up after the turn of the century. Because these psychiatrists just over-prescribe. They don't care because they're making money. They're making money. They got a patient who's coming in regularly to get their prescription filled, making sure you do some blood work. The more the merrier for the doctor. But I don't think that these students should be in medical school. I don't think these students should be in these high performance environments where they get special privileges because they have a disorder. This is not like being, crippled. This is not, you're needing a wheelchair. This is something totally different. Totally different. And most students are playing games with this. They're milking the system. Bullshit.
Use of otherwise prohibited technology. At Brown and Harvard, more than 20% of undergraduates are registered as disabled. 38% of Stanford undergraduates are registered as having a disability. The most common and most
contentious accommodation is the granting of extra time on exams for students with learning disabilities. The extra time may be necessary to complete the test, but unlike a wheelchair ramp, this kind of accommodation can be exploited. And the article goes on to describe some of the more unusual accommodations, such as students with social anxiety getting exemptions from being called on by their professors to answer questions. And one administrator at a public college in California says a student there got permission to bring their mother to class.
Fuck.
The internet reacted strongly to the article, with many saying it shows how students are trying to gain an advantage by cheating the system. Journalist Derek Thompson, friend of mine, writes, America used to stigmatize disability too severely. Now elite institutions reward it too liberally. It simply does not make any sense to have a policy that declares half of the students at Stanford cognitively disabled and in need of accommodations. This is so insane. Writer Matthew Zaitlin says, I wonder how much nihilism and low social trust comes from the sense that everyone is getting one over on you and everyone else. And New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof writes, we liberals have a way of letting good intentions run amok. Yeah. I read this story. It's a spit your coffee out, throw your coffee cup at the wall and shoot yourself story. It's so sad.
I thought about you when...
Food security is national security. Phosphate powers America's farmers, but global competitors like Russia and China threaten to control our supply. Make phosphate a critical mineral and keep America secure.
So sad.
I thought about you when this was on the docket for today. I was like, what frail of a society
they're frailing themselves. They want to be perceived as victims.
It's a combination. No, Robbie, it's a combination. Some of them want to be perceived as a victim, and therefore they just buy into this whole idea that they have attention deficit. Now, some of them really do have attention deficit. Now, in college,
all right, they're being medicated, but I don't think that they should be given extra privilege, because if they're on their medication, it should get them to baseline. So why are they given extra time? Be different if they're not on medication, but most of them are on medication. Secondly, if you need to be on psychotropics to be able to go to higher schools like grad school or professional schools, then no, you shouldn't get special privilege. Could you get in? Yeah, but do you get special privileges? No. You shouldn't get special privileges, especially when most of them are playing this game. So what is happening is, it's like everyone's saying, oh, they have attention deficit. They have attention deficit. They have attention deficit. You know what my generation is? Gen X. And Gen Xers are going to take advantage of all these fucking wussies. We're going to take advantage of them. All right? It's not these people. This is the reason why they can't read. This is the reason why they don't know their mathematics. This is the reason why everyone is a fucking idiot now. Because they buy into this idea that they're a victim of attention deficit and they need to be medicated. There's probably problems with the medication and it causes side effects. And then all of a sudden, they're not as productive. But you see this, it's rampant now. What? This was unheard of when I was a kid. Unheard of. Then all of a sudden, 38% of the population is attention deficit. Now, part of this is the technology. Our attentions are going down, but it's because of an environmental stressor. You plug yourself out of the environmental stressor in about 20 days, your brain starts to rewire back to the way it's supposed to be. It takes about 22 days to detox from all this technology. But students get special privileges? Because what it is that the high GPA is so important, especially if you're going into medicine or into law. Right there, right there. So these kids shouldn't be on this medication. The psychiatrists don't even know what they're doing. Psychiatry is in the Stone Age in understanding and how the drugs that they're prescribing to patients, what the long-term side effects are. They're in the Stone Age.
Patients. And honestly, you can only blame them for that so much. Because if you have the sense that everyone is getting extra time on their exam because they feigned some disability, you're the only one who actually has to take the exam under the conditions prescribed, well, you're going to feel it's unfair and you're going to try to get that advantage too. What if we they're creating a system where eventually 60, 70, 80% of people are getting extra time on the exam or have mom to hold their hand?
This is exactly what happened in the Tour. This is exactly what happened in the Tour de France. Everyone was doping. And to be able to compete, you had to dope. I mean, that was one of the reasons why Lance Armstrong eventually admitted to it, because everyone was doing it. It's the same fucking problem. Same damn problem. One is academic performance, the other is sports performance. But you have a medical community that is allowing for this to happen. And if the students can't do Ivy League work without extra, accommodations, maybe they shouldn't be in the Ivy League. But this is what happens. Our elite institutions are crumbling because of this crap.
So insane. You know what? I'm sorry. On some level, if you have bad anxiety and then you're not going to do bad on the exam should test for that. You should do worse on the exam for that reason. The exam is measuring how good you are at doing the exam. And if we're making it so that so everybody gets an A+ for what? It's insane. If you're worse at taking exams, you should get a worse score. Sorry, not everyone is equally good at everything. Not everyone is equally brilliant at everything. I would do way worse on a math exam than most people, and probably you. And we could, you think I'm excellent at math? I don't know. We could rig the system so that I get just as good as a grade. If I have access to, if I have extra time and a fancy calculator, and I can ask Grok to do it for me, then I'll get the same score. But I should get a worse score.
It's beyond that, Robbie. They're taking psychotropics.
Because I'm less good at it. That's what the test should be freaking testing for. This is so insane that they've allowed themselves to get hoodwinked by the language of safetyism and disability and victimhood when you it's exactly as Derek Thompson used to say. We stigmatize disability too much. Now we reward it. Now we put you on a pedestal if you're a victim, and so we encourage people to identify themselves as such because we have given power to victimhood, and that was a profound mistake. End of rant.
And that was, I wanted to give you the floor because I knew you would feel a type of way about this. I am frustrated by this because I appreciate that there is a hyper focus on situations and incidents that are often overlooked. I love that the conversation about liberals paying way too much attention to it because, yeah, it needed to be.
No, what it is the school's afraid of being sued. It's all about legality. Because we have a litigious system now where you're worried about everything, that someone's going to sue you, you can't do anything. So now the students don't even come out of the Ivy League that actually have an education. Meanwhile, they still are paying $300,000 in tuition.
Too about how people with disabilities are faring and having a fair shake at big prestigious universities. Now, I will agree there is a tendency to overcorrect, right? If we were all the way over here, we want to end somewhere right in the middle, not over here. And so to have half of these universities or even 20% that are dealing with disabilities is a little bit out there, but I also think we need to.
There are so many of these students that are on Ritalin. So many. Or some other, version of it. Why? Just stop getting that environmental pulse. Stop eating the crappy food. Start improving your gut biome. Start actually being healthy. Why not be healthy? All right. And what's amazing is how the body starts moving back to its normal self. It's very rare that people are just born with ADHD. It's environmental. Now there are issues with over vaccinations and causing hyper or hypoconductivity during the neurological development. So some of these cases are actually injury of the scheduling, but not all of them. I saw approximately 30% of medical students that were classified under this ADHD that are medicated that were given extra time on tests. And you could tell who they were because right after the test, they crash because what they do is they increase their dosage to be able to concentrate, to try to zone into the test. And then that day they crash and they crash for 2.5 days. They can't do anything. You know who they are right away. That's the society we have now. That's the student body that we have now. And now it's moved into the undergrad world. What probably happened was that it was in the undergrad world and then it moved into the professional schools. But when I was a kid, this didn't exist. Now, of course, Gen Xers weren't on the schedule, on the 86 schedule. We were on the 70s schedule. So, it's different. But the thing is that many people are playing games because the stakes are so high to get into a good school Ivy League or Ivy League Plus, maybe even the top 50. It's so competitive now compared to when I was younger that a student will use these types of things to be able to get an edge. And then the whole Lance Armstrong dynamic happens. Well, if Johnny's doing it, then Judy's got to do it. If Judy's doing it, then Tom needs to do it. And it snowballs. But the reality of the situation is that these students that are coming out of these schools start pushing back. Start pushing back. Ask them, like, what do you really think about this? Why do you think about it like that? They can't answer. They can't answer. Take advantage of them because they can't think.
That do include some mental health disabilities that are not very obvious, like wheelchair disabilities or anything that we think are disabilities because how we've been taught. But there are people who genuinely do.
Those are made up.
Wait, no, there are people that genuinely do need extra time or do have anxiety. I don't know about bringing your mom, but there's some people who actually.
I would say that 10% of the 30% actually need it. 90% of the 30% don't need it. They're playing games.
Extra technology or a quiet space to take a test because they had extreme ADD and things like that. These are real things that actually happen. Maybe not to 40% of the Ivy League population.
Should just fail.
But a good, yeah, but then so
They shouldn't be at the Ivy League. They should go to a different school. Sorry, can't handle it. I mean, if you're not tall enough to play basketball, should you be playing basketball? If you're not strong enough to play football, should the coach be forced to put you on the team? What if you don't know how to throw the football? Does that mean that you guaranteed the quarterback position?
in school, like you fail out of Stanford, that doesn't particularly help you get a job, especially for those. Like a lot of my friends left a college and went into finance, let's say, and worked at some of these investment banks. Now, in our field, people may have looked at what school you went to, but it's really like, are you a great, well, for me, are you a good writer? Can you produce? Come show me some examples of your work. So for finance and for investment banking, it was like, what's your GPA? These are things that were really happening. So you're just take a longer time, but you're really good at like a specific task, and you're really good in the banking industry. You just take a long time on a quiz, a silly quiz that really a lot of times in college has nothing to do with your actual real life. Then why should you be punished with some like 2.1 GPA and be the last one on the list at the job for JP Morgan because you have a little bit of ADD?
Because doing well on the test when it's administered fairly correlates very highly with success in that workplace.
Not always. Some people are great successes. No, some people are great successes that do, like
school wasn't looking for the exceptions.
No, school could not have been amazing for you. Just like you said, you weren't the best in math. You know what? I think you can calculate your way to a comfortable job like this one. Okay, so you calculated some things correctly to make sure that you were successful in life. So that's what I'm saying. You don't need to be amazing at math to be able to.
I'm not saying being
yeah, but you didn't
understand. I'm not saying there's no. It doesn't make you a more worthwhile human being. You still have the same moral worth as everyone else. And there are some fields where doing really good at tests or getting really good grades correlates with success in that field and is very important. I would not particularly say that journalism or punditry is one of them. What we're doing is important to have good writing skills and good communication skills. Those things are, well, you can test for good writing skills, right? Our math.
But if I needed 10 more minutes than you, my writing was freaking fantastic. And
no, that's unfair. Your writing is better than I.
I got 10 more minutes, but I have a disability that requires me to
absolutely not. Absolutely.
And then I write a full surprise-winning piece, then I shouldn't deserve to be a writer.
Maybe if I got 10 more minutes, I would write a Pulitzer.
Maybe not though. You should, maybe.
Well, it should just be the same time with both of us.
No, what if you write an amazing, fascinating piece without the 10 minutes, and I really write a terrible, my worst work without that extra 10 minutes?
Well, if you write the same piece, but it takes you longer than I do.
Then what about this? What about this? Don't have these kids on the psychotropics. Stop the medicating the students, and take the lowest common denominator. What time is needed for the slowest student, and just give that time to all of the students. And if the students finish early, great. If the students that need more time, they're giving the allotted time. Just use the lowest common denominator in terms of the time, not in terms of the content. See, what is happening in school is they take the dumbest student in the room and they lower the quality of the education and only teach the easy material and not the hard material, because the dumbest one in the room can't do it. So nobody should be. And that's what's happening in public schools, elementary schools. So maybe they just say, okay, the test is going to be this. You have 3 hours. That's it. Tough. Some people are going to be able to do it in 2. Some people are going to need 3. Great. But they shouldn't be given extra on top of that.
Should be penalized when they look at my essay from college because I didn't have 10 more minutes.
Yes, you should.
No, there's people who actually just really do need that extra time and really need that extra care. That's why there are people in schools and in this.
I think the difference between an obvious physical disability where you need a ramp because you're in a wheelchair, or you need glasses because you have bad eyesight. I think the difference between that and these very nebulous and poorly defined social disabilities or psychological disabilities.
You don't take psychologists seriously. This has been proven to me in the last 2 days. Psychologists will talk about the effects of smartphones on children. You don't take that seriously. Psychologists talk about psychologists talk about all these things. They talk about how there are actual cognitive disabilities. You don't accept it. Like,
okay. All right. If the student, all right, yeah, but let's just say that you agree with cell phone use puts you in a lower brainwave, which it does. All right. It makes your kids stupid. Right? The more cell phone use that you do, more social media that you consume, you become stupid. Okay. The answer isn't to have the student get more time to do the test. The answer is, stupid student, stop using the cell phone. Oh. What a concept.
Empirical data and provide it as information to us and accept it. No, that's ridiculous. You just won't accept the truth. You gotta. One of my good friends told me you need to accept the reality, and that's what you need to do. You need to start to accept the reality.
This is about people who are accepting your lived reality.
They overcorrected, but that certainly doesn't mean we should go back to the old way where the only thing that was a disability was a wheelchair. That's also not acceptable. Because we need to find some happy.
Physical disabilities should be accommodated.
Yeah,
if you're blind, then you have to have the test read to you, like yes, or Braille version of the test. That is so different from saying you get.
So there are no cognitive disabilities at all to you.
I didn't say there are no cognitive.
They shouldn't be acknowledged.
There are cognitive disabilities, for sure, but it can be gamed, and there are too many people that are being prescribed or claiming a problem, and the school is willing to give them extra time, extra provisions, because they don't want a lawsuit. So it's a combination of being an over litigious society and people that don't have morality or are gaming the system.
I would need more specificity than that to decide whether it should be acknowledged or not. People should not get more time than another student. And let me go a little step further.
Okay.
I'm acknowledging that some people, for whatever cognitive reason, will do less well on a test than another person. What I'm saying is the point of the test is to figure that out. The fact that you're going to do less well on a test than someone else is what it's testing for. Some people are supposed to get an A+, and some people fail it. But now we've designed this stupid system where everyone is supposed to get an A+.
No, my point is that
it's 2 hours to do it to get you an A+. You're going to get 2 hours. Then what's the point of a test? Let's not even have the test. Let's just give everyone an A+ and move on. Let's just enroll everyone in college and just everyone gets an A+ and everyone gets a diploma, and that's it.
That's what's happening now.
Give somebody a couple more minutes or require them to do a test. Some people that have cognitive disabilities will actually help them just compete at a fair playing field.
What if my cognitive disability is
yours is not real. So yours is not real. That's not a real thing.
No, I have a cognitive disability.
I'm talking about people that have maybe a learning disorder.
How dare you? I have a cognitive disability. I'm bad at arithmetic. I have a problem. I have a difficulty keeping track of numbers in my head. So I should use pen and paper and get more time. And then I'll get the same score as you.
What we're agreeing on and talking about is people that have access to privilege, whose parents actually probably got them in a situation where they're giving their kid the best shake at being extremely successful. And so they're asking for extra time and extra space when there are real people that actually need a few extra minutes or some quiet space to achieve at least a decent score on tests. No, they're not ex-students, but these people also might be summed up by their grades when it comes time to graduate college. And so they're just asking that they get a fair chance to actually compete in this testing. Not a fair chance to get an A+, there's a fair chance to compete. And they can't focus.
Everybody has the same time limit and everyone has the same accommodations. And then we see a range of scores, and that's how you.
I'm certainly happy that you're not in the education field. If you want to cut the Department of Ed, you think there's no combination.
What you do is you just take, you either take the average of what the students can do in terms of time in answering questions, or you take the lowest and then just set it across the board. And some people finish early, some people don't. But they shouldn't be given, certain people given extra time. No. Absolutely not. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. Omega-3 will help with your cardiovascular health. It'll help to bring down your lipid profile, your LDL levels, and increase your HDL level. Super important. Because when you do that, and you're bringing down inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation. Plaque formation is bad. Reducing plaque formation is good for your cardiovascular health. And omega-3 reduces the stickiness of your red blood cells to prevent overclotting. Super important. Take this every day, improve your cardiovascular health, and do some resistance training and some cardio. Myotrol helps to build muscle and to maintain muscle. This works very well for someone that is in their 40s, male or female. You know, if you're 40 years of age or older, you take this, do resistance training. It'll help you to build the muscle. Make sure you do back exercises to build muscle in your back. And the reason why is that you're going to improve your posture, you're going to improve your venous flow back to your heart, and you're going to improve your lymphatic flow. In addition, by strengthening your back, you're also going to build denser vertebrae. This is super important for anti-aging. Now, Myotrol, take every day as polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans, helps with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. So you're reducing atrophy, you're increasing your musculature, and that will take you into your geriatric years with better health. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from Myotrol. You'll recover quicker after your workout and you'll gain strength. So please go to my store, get the Myotrol, get the omega-3, improve your cardiovascular health and your musculature. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg.
Before the Senate Armed Services Committee about the second strike, or the double tap, as everyone keeps calling it. I sort of get a kick out of everyone using the jargon at this point. Will it be the Admiral's testimony or the results of Signalgate that end Pete Hegseth's career?
You know, look, I don't think there's going to be any one thing that pulls that trigger potentially from the White House. I mean, like, remember, a month ago we were talking about that crazy meeting in Quantico where, you know, Hegseth calls all the general staff and talks about what they wear and how fat they are. I mean, like, that began people scratching their head going, what in the world is going on in the secretary's office? So this has been kind of a routine exercise of inconsistency by this secretary. And I think that it's the cumulative weight of all this stuff that ultimately will, I think, sink this ship, sink this boat without a double plow.
Well done. Who's bought DoubleTap.com? James, is that available? I think I know a guy who's buying. Great panel today. Rick Davis, Caitlin Legacki. They'll be back in hour 2 here. Double Tap, hour 2. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Jane Harmon will be with us ahead. Stay right here on Bloomberg.
Let's take a look at some other news here. Let's listen into Pete Heggs. Let's listen into General Keane
Finance the old way. Finance the rat way. Retired four-star General Jack Keane joins me now. General, what is your reading of this debate over killing survivors?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of misunderstanding here, and I think the Pentagon should conduct their own independent investigation of what took place there, because they're really good at getting to the bottom of this, and if there was something wrong here, they do hold people accountable. I'm a little concerned about the congressional investigation because of the politics involved with it, but just to set some facts in front of the American people so they understand this better, is that in the 20 years of the war, 9/11 wars, we've had Republican and Democratic presidents authorize our military, when they're conducting airstrikes through drones or other means against isolated targets. In other words, there's no American ground troops in the area. And the mission is to kill the terrorists because of who they are and what they represent. It's irrelevant whether they're at a meeting and they're not armed or not. Maybe they are armed, but the mission is to kill the terrorists because of who they are. And if they don't kill them all with the first strike, those commanders have always been authorized to conduct reattacks. This has been done probably at least at a minimum 25% of the time. And that is what we're talking about here. But let's get the facts. The facts are, we don't know how close another ship may have been to go police up those survivors, if that was even feasible, without putting the ships or helicopter in some kind of danger. That's what I mean. But the principle of reattacking to kill a target that's identified as terrorists, whether they're wounded, whether they're armed, is irrelevant. It's who they are. In this case, the boat and the cargo needed to be destroyed and the terrorists eliminated. And given the fact the terrorists weren't eliminated, it's well within that commander's authority to finish and eliminate the mission that he was assigned.
I just want to bring up one issue. The Democrats say it's okay to ignore military orders. My question is, where does that leave, say, the helicopter pilot who fired the missiles at that boat? I mean, aren't we just really interfering with military authority here?
Well, a couple of things. One is our military leaders and soldiers are not permitted to obey an illegal order. They are held accountable to refuse that order. And that's to give you a sense of the moral clarification we have in the military. That's why I find these statements being made by others trying to encourage the chain of command not to obey illegal orders is insulting to them.
Yeah.
Insulting to them in the values we hold dear in the military. They know full well what that is. And if the military is going to get an illegal order at the very high level where the officer is being given that mission, they're likely going to say, sir, that's not legal. And we have lawyers at all the various levels in the chain of command to ensure that these orders are legal. Come on, we've got a pretty good system out there, and it really works. And we have soldiers who come into the military whose values are strengthened by the values we hold dear inside the military.
I'll change the subject for a second. Putin met with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner yesterday. They talked for 5 hours, I believe, about ending the war in Ukraine. No concrete decisions made at that meeting. But, General, it just seems at the moment that Putin is winning.
No, I don't think Putin is winning. I mean, he advertises that he's winning. He advertises that he's going to roll over Ukraine, that they're back on their heels. I mean, that's his narrative. Just it's as false as he advertises that it's completely justified to invade Ukraine because they and the Eastern Europeans are encroaching on them. But the reality is, listen, I think where we are is we have to come down to what is President Zelensky willing to agree to and what is Putin willing to agree to as a result of these negotiations. And if there is agreement, and likely there will be concessions made on both sides, one thing that must happen as a result of that agreement, and this is crucial, we need security guarantees that are robust to ensure that there's not a future attack by Putin. And what I mean by that is likely the United States in charge of those command and control, It's an air force, air capability, ground force security, protecting the terrain, and maritime at sea as well. Logistical infrastructure provided by the United States, and then robust build up the Ukrainian military, help to reform it and rebuild it so it can eventually deter Russia on its own and be somewhat independent of the United States. They are right now the second most powerful military in Europe, better than the Eastern Europeans and the Western Europeans, except for Turkey. And we even can make them even stronger. So if any deal is going to be enduring, we need to ensure that they have security guarantees backed up by people on the ground and in the air and also at sea. That has to take place, or Putin will likely reattack.
Got it. General, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Weekend, Drake and Billie Eilish. Once again, stocks higher, of course, across the board, with the Dow now up 362 points. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. I'm Alexis Christoforous. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Alexis, thank you so much. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Great to have you with us here on the Wednesday edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio with breaking news from Washington. Multiple reports now about a Pentagon watchdog report into the Signalgate scandal, finding that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth violated some of the department's regulations when he shared sensitive information from his cell phone on Signal, and in fact may have endangered troops in the process. We're going to have a lot more on this when we spend some time with Nick Wadhams, and coming up as well, Jane Harmon will join us in studio with our eyes on tomorrow's testimony from the admiral that ordered the second strike on the alleged drug boat coming out of Venezuela. This was, of course, a big topic of conversation as President Trump held his final cabinet meeting of the year yesterday. And sitting right next to him was the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, who made clear that he was not, in fact, the one who ordered that second strike. And while he was watching the attack live on a live video feed, he had left the room before it was clear that there were survivors in the water who were then killed by the second strike. President Trump was asked about this before Hegseth even got into details, and clearly not concerned about the way this all unfolded. Here's what the Commander-in-Chief had to say.
I would say this, they had a strike. I hear the gentleman that was in charge of that is extraordinary. He's an extraordinary person. I'll let Pete speak about it. But Pete was satisfied. Pete didn't know about second attack having to do with two people. I guess Pete will have to speak to him. I can say this, I want those boats taken out. And we have to attack on land also, just like we attack on sea.
Hegseth said we're just beginning attacks like these. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, Admiral Frank Bradley, who ordered that second strike, will testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee as members of Congress try to get answers that were not delivered yesterday in the cabinet meeting. Nick Wadhams, who runs our national security coverage here in Washington, is with us in studio with more on this. Nick, when you add everything up here, the questions about Venezuela, the testimony tomorrow, this Signalgate IG report that...
Notice how fast Congress is to respond to drug boats being blown away with a double tap, but they are nowhere to be found when you need to solve problems like making sure our elderly are taken care of or our veterans.
Alcohol use, allegations of assault, all sorts of unsavory things in there, and that's been followed by a repeated string of things, the Signal situation, and then this argument that he essentially was not there to see the second strike on this vessel that killed some survivors, and what some legal experts are saying is war crime.
Yeah.
At the same time, President continues, at least publicly, to say he remains satisfied with Pete Hegseth, and what you have, what the president has in his defense secretary is an official who has been unstintingly loyal, has really pushed the MAGA agenda, has gone after DEI and woke, what he sees as woke policies, has been on board with the president's push to revamp procurement, budgeting, all sorts of stuff within the Pentagon. So, so far, at least, it appears that President Trump believes that the positives outweigh the negatives when it comes to Secretary Hegseth.
Wow. Will we see a clarified policy when it comes to Venezuela following these investigations? We've got armed services committees in both chambers looking into this. Once they get the
clarified policy, just kill them.
Soon there'll be some sort of report. What follows?
Well, you know, I think you actually have seen a more clear policy in the sense of what hasn't happened, because after that initial strike, that was the first strike that the U.S. did on September 2nd. And the reporting we have gleaned since then, and what officials have confirmed, is that there were at least two hits, maybe even more on that boat. One to take it out of action, and then a second to fully destroy the boat and also kill survivors. What we do know since then is that they have not done secondary or tertiary strikes to kill survivors. So you had the case some weeks ago where they actually then went in and collected people who had survived the initial strike and sent them home. So
that was based on
we don't know what happened there exactly. But putting together those two events, the experts we have spoken to suggest that would indicate a change in policy, that there may have been a recognition that the initial version got them into very, very thorny legal trouble, moral trouble. Geneva Conventions explicitly say you cannot do this, that is a violation of international law. So just based on the actions that they have taken, we have not seen a pattern that was repeated, at least publicly, that we know of, based on what happened on that September 2nd.
Just to be clear, it's important what you just said, and everyone is a little bit too cool for school walking around Washington talking about this double tap strike. Right. You've got survivors in the water that a double tap violates the Geneva Convention.
Yes, I mean, so what's happened is and there is an argument that any strike whatsoever on these boats is a violation of international law, because there's a real challenge of the president's argument that these pose an imminent threat to the United States. And for years, the U.S. has interdicted these boats, arrested the people on them, seized the drugs. Now the president says they pose a mortal threat to the United States, and he has the right to. He calls the people on the boats narco-terrorists. So there's the broad umbrella of the fact that there are a lot of very serious questions about whether these strikes are illegal in the first place. But there is very little doubt that if you take out the boat, it is no longer a threat, and you have survivors clinging to the boat.
Yes.
It would be the same thing as you would see in war, where the laws of war prevent you from going around and executing the people who have been wounded in your attacks. You can't do that.
Right.
So that's how we now find ourselves in this situation.
Admiral Halsey is going to have some interesting things to say as well.
He is, and it'll be really interesting to see the line he walks, because you've seen this from the president and also from Pete Hegseth in his repeated commentary, where he says, hey, I wasn't there. I didn't see that happen. So sort of distancing himself, but also saying, I support the guy who made the order. He did the right thing. So he's walking a very fine line. So Bradley, it'll be really interesting to see what he says tomorrow in terms of, hey, I was just following orders. Will he say, I believe this order may have been legally questionable?
Will that be made public, or we don't know that testimony?
I'm not sure at this point. We don't know. I don't think there will be a public hearing.
Everything,
but it may have to open up.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Great to see you, as always. Nick Wadham's got his hands full these days running our national security team here in Washington. With much more to consider here, we're going to bring Jane Harmon in on this conversation coming up next. But there's an important story in the Washington Post today that I'll point you to. It might get some eye rolls from folks who support what's going on in the Caribbean right now. But the family of a Colombian man who was killed in a strike September 15th has filed a complaint with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, alleging the U.S. committed human rights violations in an extrajudicial killing. I just mentioned this because it's the first time a name has been attached to any of this. Alejandro Andres Carrana Medina, 42-year-old, a fisherman, killed, as I mentioned, in the strike off the Colombian coast on September 15th. He's got a family, it turns out, and they've got a lawyer. Grieving family left without their chief breadwinner, as we read here. Carranza's family seeking compensation. I guess he had kids. Very unclear to see if they have the power to enforce any recommendations that are made. I told you Jane Harmon was coming, and she's with us in studio today. Former Democratic Congresswoman from California, importantly, former ranking member of the Intelligence Committee. And it's great to see you in the flesh.
You too, Joe.
So if you were running the Intel Committee right now, either as chair or ranking member, what questions would you be asking about what is happening in the waters off Venezuela? And would you even get a briefing? Because as the Democrat on that panel, from what I understand now, you still would not have heard from the administration.
Well, I think Mark Warner has said they got very unsatisfying briefings.
Yeah.
He was the chair. He's now the ranking member on the
Yes.
Senate side. I'm
Yes.
not sure what's happened on the House side. But what would I be doing? I would be raising hell. I think Congress not only has a right to be briefed, but I think Congress is abdicating its role. That I would give good marks to 3 Republicans, at least that I can think of. Rand Paul, I guess he's a libertarian. Roger Wicker, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and Mike Rogers, who chairs the House Armed Services Committee. And they have been pushing back. But where's the rest of Congress? Congress is on trial here, and Congress is really on trial with respect to Ukraine. That's why I wore my scarf and carried back from Kyiv.
Yeah, well, I'd like to get into that in a moment because these are both evolving, both of these stories before our eyes here.
The IG report,
Well, not mine. There's another one for you. But in terms of the admiral who ordered this second strike, based on what you understand, what's he going to tell these committees when he goes to testify tomorrow? How damaging could that be?
Well, I think he should have followed the advice of the 6 Democrats who said never follow an illegal order.
You believe that was an illegal order?
I believe it was, and I believe he should have known that. I'm not sure what he did. Let's be sure we know what the timeline is. It's a little bit, to me, eye-scratching to believe that Hegseth didn't give the order and was too busy to see it executed in a case like this.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
What did you make of that yesterday? The Pentagon's a busy place. I had to get to a meeting, he said.
It is a busy place. And maybe he needs to get a little busier about being on top of the workload there. Just saying that rumors are rampant, but it doesn't mean they're true, that his days are numbered. Yeah. And that Trump maybe doesn't want to do the deal personally and wants it somehow to evolve. But I think he's not well liked in the building. He's not well respected. And I think former military, and I talked to lots of them, are really pretty worried about the civilian leadership of the Pentagon.
A lot of folks pointed out the fact that he was not sent to Kyiv or Russia, for that matter. The Army Secretary was in Kyiv, Dan Driscoll, talking with Ukrainians. But we're still waiting, Jane, for a readout on this meeting with Vladimir Putin. And I want everyone to hear first what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, had to say about this negotiation in the president's cabinet meeting yesterday. Let's listen.
Every day is a challenge, but it's been driven personally by the president. It's the reason why we're involved in this whole Ukraine-Russia conflict. That's not our war, not the president's war. This war started and never would have happened if he's been president. Even as we speak to you now, Steve Witkoff is in Moscow trying to find a way to end this war and save lives of 9,000 people, Mr. President. You know are dying every week. More people are dying a week in that war than have died in the entirety of the U.S. is involved in Afghanistan and Iraq. Just think about that, how bloody and destructive it is.
But here's what we've not heard from the White House. Anything about the meeting. Russians have said a lot, but there's no readout from the administration, which is extremely unusual. How do you read into it?
Well, a couple of comments. First about Rubio. I was in Halifax at the Halifax Security Forum a couple of weekends ago when the CODEL, led by Jean Shaheen, but also having Republican members, got a call that evening, the evening that the 28-point plan surfaced, from Rubio saying, well, it's just a draft. It's not cooked yet. He wasn't in the room. He had nothing to do with it, or probably had nothing to do with it. And I think it's dead on arrival. I mean, I brought some props. I don't want to surprise you, but this was from Senator Mitch McConnell when that plan was released. Quote, Putin has spent the entire year trying to play President Trump for a fool.
This is a tweet, right?
This is a tweet from Mitch McConnell on X. And this one was from Roger Wicker, whom I just mentioned as chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Quote, any suggestion that we can pursue arms control with a serial liar and killer like Putin should be treated with great skepticism, unquote. So I think that Rubio's trying to make his best case. He is the Secretary of State. He is the one who should be leading the negotiations. This other team, I'm not saying they're terrible people. I'm sure they're trying to make a deal, and wouldn't it be nice for the war to end? But let's remind everybody that Russia was the aggressor and Ukraine is the victim. And rewarding Russia and punishing Ukraine is the wrong outcome.
Well, everything in that plan looks like it would be a reward, right?
Well,
so what, do you trust Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner running this conversation?
Well, I don't want to talk about trust, but the plan as explained to me looked like there was some oops in there. There was some bad translation from the Russian. Looks like exactly what Mitch McConnell said, that Putin is playing Trump. And if we're not talking about it, then I'm betting nothing very much good came today, except for Russia blasting Europe and threatening, some action against Europe. The sadness is NATO's meeting today. Rubio has for the first time in a century or something,
What do you mean?
blown off.
He sent a deputy.
I think it's a message to NATO. And it's
That
a
means
very
Russia or Europe will have no input on how this ends.
it's a very bad, well, let's see. It's a very bad message to NATO. We're a member of NATO. We're not a bystander here. We're a leader of NATO. And I think that's a terrible message. And one more point. I said Congress is on trial. Congress is on trial. There is a Graham-Blumenthal bill to impose secondary sanctions on all countries, all.
Isn't Lindsey Graham talking to Trump about this on the golf course?
That deal with Russia. Yeah. It has 85 plus co-sponsors in the Senate. That is a veto-proof majority, which means if Lindsey Graham, I'm sure Blumenthal would like to do this, calls up that bill, that bill passes. And it will, I'm guessing, pass the House too. And then that is real pressure on Putin. Is Congress for Ukraine, or is Congress just, again, hiding and out of the game, the Republicans in Congress?
Well, let's see if the president feels like he's being strung along by Putin enough to greenlight that sanctions bill. Jane Harmon, I love that you printed out the X post. I'm picturing you back in Congress with the easels set up.
You got to read this.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. Lignans is a powder you mix with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie. I normally mix it with hummus, but you can also mix it with yogurt or applesauce. But you take it every day. What this will do is help your immune system and your endocrine system, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. Super important as part of a larger stack to slow down the aging process. And that stack is turmeric and ashwagandha root. So please go to my store, get the lignans. Again, you want to boost up that immune system and help with your endocrine system. If you take lignans when you work out, you'll actually reduce inflammation during that workout and you'll recover quicker. And lignans helps the cardiovascular health. By bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store, get the lignans. It's dual purpose. And by bringing down inflammation at the brain level, you're protecting neurons. Because if you have chronic inflammation around your neuron, the myelin sheath will start to degrade. Also, the neural health will start to decline and your neuroplasticity will start to recede. So if you have lots of inflammation, chronic, what will happen is that you'll think slower, you'll have worse memory. So it's important to keep inflammation down. And that's a cornerstone method or modality to slowing down the aging process and improve your different organ systems. So please go to my store and get the lignans. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. All right, let's listen into.
In a cooked-up study, 5 out of 6 amateur food critics loved the Toyota BZ. And number 6, right, critic's gonna critic. Let's give him a taste. One order of humble pie. To go, Toyota BZ. One drive can change your mind.
It seems as if the retail results have been idiosyncratic, but I can tell you what I've become very nervous about is what has powered the U.S. economy for the last 5 years, which is what I call the avocado toast generation. So it's between 24 and 38. So it's the older Gen Z and the younger millennials. And they've really hit a wall. They started to hit a wall this summer. So they've been powering spending at Chipotle, Sweet Greens. I mean, the idea of spending $20 for a salad or a burrito bowl. You don't see me in line at a Chipotle, but I'm not brown bagging it, but at any rate. So the restaurants started to talk about the fact that this demographic was really struggling because of the resumption of student debts. And we went further into that. And if you look at what the avocado generation had, they've actually amassed a lot of debt over the last 5 years. So they've got 28% of all consumer debt. They've got about $300 less or more into their spending. So we think about COVID stimulus as being a massive stimulus impact on the consumer. It was $814 billion. Student debt forbearance, $400 billion. So COVID stimulus went out to 165 million Americans. Debt forbearance went out to fewer than 40 million Americans, with 50% of the spending power. So this demographic had a massive amounts of discretionary spending power, and that's not going to come into the economy. And so I think you see names. I was surprised by Urban Outfitter being so strong, because that caters to a very avocado toasty type demographic. But I think you're going to see more and more pressure throughout this year and into next, because they have got a tremendous amount of debt. They have no equity and they have no way out. And what's going to happen is this: the Treasury Department has this top program where it's going to garnish tax refunds, and the Department of Education is aggressive on the 20% serious delinquent and charged off loans. They're going to start pulling this back, and that's going to hurt them a lot. And obviously, we know the low end is really strained.
So what's the elasticity of this consumer group, which I would call the matcha generation?
Oh, that's
that
actually,
might pair
I like
with your
that.
avocado toast generation.
I think it works, or you could call it the French press coffee generation.
Lots of options.
Yeah, it's true. The elasticity is going to come down to, I don't think there's a lot of elasticity with this demographic that has so much debt. So the debt gets worse. So the student debt is the one part of the economy that has the highest delinquencies, the highest charge-offs. I think that's going to bleed into auto lending, because the avocado toast generation owns 35% of the auto debt outstanding. So that's going to get crowded out. So you're going to see it factor in. The elasticity, I think, is really interesting in terms of one factor, like one trend that we've been tracking very closely has been home equity loan extraction. And that's been the fastest growing loan category of any consumer loan category. And that started in 2020, or in earnest, the summer of 2024. And what's really interesting is, historically, that's home equity loan extractions have been used for home renovations, but now they're increasingly used for cash management. So since 2022, there's been over a 50% rise in home equity extractions use of cash management. Now, that is, every week we look at this. I pull it through Bloomberg, and it continues to accelerate. Now, it's only available for the prime market. So if you have any type of credit ding on your credit score, you can't access the equity in your home. But avocado toasters, by and large, don't own homes, so they have no equity to tap. And if they do own homes, they've got high LTVs, right? Because they haven't owned homes for that long, so they don't have much equity to tap. So that feeds into very little elasticity in this group. And then you think about when you look at 2026 and people get excited about one beautiful bill, tax refunds. Well, if you own a bunch of student debt, you're going to get tax refund garnishment. So I don't see, it's a great question. I don't see a lot of elasticity within this group. Now, that said, there's still so much money swashing through the system, but it's at the high end.
You know, this K-shaped economy, Meredith, is it something that's always been out there? Is it more pronounced in the last 15 years than it was in the past, do you think? Because it just seems like it's really pronounced these days.
Yeah, there's without a doubt, it's gotten so much more pronounced in the last, really since the great financial crisis.
Yeah.
And, it's said by probably the most esteemed person in this building that you can have, a wage, you can have income disparities, but when it reaches a breaking point, it's not good for society. And I think at this point, it's reached a breaking point. So the VA puts out numbers whereby you see who controls what amount of spending over the course of the years. And I've been going back to early 2000s, and you can see in terms of spending how much the low end contributes and how much the high end contributes, and that's just been diverging. So the most recent number shows the bottom 40% contributes only 22% of spending, whereas the top 40 contributes 62%. That was much more, that wasn't equal, but it was much more even, let's say 17 years ago.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power.
What if I told you everything on your computer could be gone at any moment, and you wouldn't even realize it immediately? Your passwords, your online account.
Bitcoin's trying to bump up on the year, and that's around 94,000. And then above that, it's got $100,000 resistance. So it's got walls of resistance. So it might be doing okay, but it's reminding me of how human nature and markets will never change. Like you mentioned with some other companies that they get way too extended in bull markets. They expect it's never going to stop. And then when the music stops playing, the tide goes out, and to me, it's just getting started. So one thing that's really got way oversold is strategy. MicroStrategy was a great lead indicator. It got up to about 50% below its 200-day moving average. That was way oversold. It needs to bounce. Bear markets bounce. But by the end of the year, there's key things that need for Bitcoin to go higher. And when the stock market has to go up, it's so highly correlated, and that's getting a little dicey. Volatility has to stay low. 120-day volatility around 11%, and the stock market's the lowest if it ends there since 2017. And the VIX has to go down. The VIX volatility index, right around 16. 200-day average was almost closer to 20. So all that stuff has to line up, and the big cryptos are leading the way lower. And hey, I'll end with this. The Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index is down about 15% this year. So to me, we get lucky if Bitcoin does not become the Grinch for Christmas. I'm still sticking with it's going to be the Grinch.
So what's going on over at American Bitcoin? Of course, to start the week, we've been seeing really brutal declines, down about 16% on Monday, almost 40% of a decline yesterday. Now we're seeing it a bit in the green. But what was going on?
Well, one key thing I'll point out about, to me, in the macro is what's happening in the space. My colleague, Andrew Silverman, penned an article recently. His headline was, "We have a resting president who's now a Bitcoin billionaire." That's never happened in history, and that's what's really shifted in the space. This is all related to the Trump administration, and Trump administration officials. And that's what really pissed away, got a lot of crypto people upset. In the past, they're getting away from the system. Now they're dependent on it, and if they're buying it, they're supporting prices, they're supporting the Trump administration. So that's what's shifted, and all that stuff is mean reverting. Strategies is one example. The problem is there's probably a lot more room on the downside. There's still plenty of these millions of cryptos that are worth billions of dollars. They track nothing. Yet we do have things like stablecoins. There's about 300 billion of those. Those are pretty good. But to me, this is just getting started. And again, the bottom line is a great leading indicator for risk assets going up, and they're heading lower.
Mike, step back here to your global commodities coverage here. What's your 2026 theme? What are you asking people to pay attention to?
I'm really worried about the no man's land we've reached in gold and silver. I mean, they're major bull markets, but there's only a few times in history we've got this stretch versus most moving averages. And averages, and this is when I turn off my fundamental hat, put my risk management hat. You have to be very careful here. To me, the indication for commodities, by crude oil going down and gold going up, is we may be set up for another deflationary cycle after inflation. That means stock market potentially getting a kind of an indication from gold that it's going to head lower next year, which is what makes me worried about all commodities, particularly the economic sensitive one like copper and crude oil. And crude oil is a bear market.
I mean, what's your read on copper prices?
Well, it's having a good bounce now. We have some major supply constraints. Demand from China, is it there? And we also have U.S. tariffs. So right now, about $5.40 a pound in the U.S. I'm really afraid. Sure, number one key thing, just like Bitcoin, the stock market has to go up for copper to stay resilient. If we get it just to drop back to its 200-day moving average in stock market, that's going to be a pressure factor on copper. So to me, the key thing is this industrial metal is going up with gold and all metals, but the risk is next year it reverts a little bit lower, as indicated by very low stock market volatility. That is only one way, and that is to go up, which means pressure on copper.
What if I told you everything on your computer could be gone at any moment and you wouldn't even realize it immediately? Your passwords, your bank accounts.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root. Ashwagandha root will bring down cortisol levels and help to control your blood glucose levels. By doing that, you're helping your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Please go to my store and get the ashwagandha root. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water.
You know, I'd go to the ground, knock on doors. I would find issues locally, education, health, things that are not typical Trump-related issues that you can find common cause with, especially suburban voters. The rural voters will likely be there for you, just not in the same margins as a presidential election here.
Interesting. This really does make me look forward to campaign season. Talking this out with you guys is always fascinating to me. But let's talk about the immediate impact, Caitlin. Mike Johnson now has 220 House Republicans again, so it's like we're starting the year all over. And obviously, we've got a long time before we're talking about actual midterm races. So this brings us immediately to the congressional agenda. And it might have just gotten a little more difficult for Democrats in the House to pass any extension of Obamacare subsidies. What do you think?
I think that you're increasingly going to see a number of Republicans who are looking for ways to show their independence from both House leadership and Donald Trump as part of an effort to kind of stanch the bleeding in the midterms. So I actually think that last night's result actually may give Democrats a couple of spots to work with Republicans who are in these suburban districts where ACA is very popular, to get some of these key provisions across the finish line, simply because I think a lot of members in these frontline districts, they're either going to retire or they're going to look for ways to separate themselves from the national party. And this is a really easy way to do it.
Interesting. What do you think about that? Rick, does this additional seat matter for Mike Johnson?
Look, everything matters with these slim margins, and it's just more leverage that he gets. It's incremental, but it's a good thing, right? I think Republicans really have to figure out how to get out of this trap, because the trap is they look like they are stopping healthcare from reaching Americans without a plan to replace it with anything. And as much as I like Senator Cassidy, the idea that we're going to just, give people another health account is not going to cover it with the voters. So if I were Republican strategist, I'd be finding an exit door fast to get this done before the end of the year, so that you can look at next year without having to talk about this all day long.
Well, that sounds like an opportunity for Democrats, Caitlin. What do you think?
I agree. I think Rick should take over all strategies of the Republican Party these days.
It didn't work out.
I don't
so
think
well
that's an endorsement, Rick. Yeah, he had that job.
I agree with everything.
Let's not go too far. In our remaining moment, Caitlin, the point that you made with regard to Tennessee about nationalizing the race, the fact is, the Democrat in this case, Afton Bain, was called the AOC of Tennessee. President Trump said she hated country music and she despised Christians. Isn't that national politics?
Yeah, and I think, part of what's challenging is that when you look at the Senate map, when you look at some of these frontline districts, you have, either primaries or candidates where you're choosing between somebody with local roots and local experience where people know them, they know what they stand for, and candidates that are more popular online, and we should be opting for the former.
Well, this is a great conversation, and I appreciate both of your insights. Caitlin Legacki and Rick Davis together as our great panel today for the Wednesday edition. Thank you. Coming up, we're going to talk to former Republican Congressman Kevin Brady and the two gentlemen who helped to negotiate.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the turmeric. Turmeric will soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation. That will help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system and your brain function. By bringing down inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation at the vascular level. By bringing down inflammation, you're helping your immune system. By bringing down inflammation around your neurons, you're helping the health of the neuron and the myelin sheath. So please go to my store and get the turmeric. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Stack these different supplements the way I've mentioned in this broadcast, and you will slow down the aging process and get healthy. But it's a holistic approach. It's about proper diet, exercise, proper supplementation, proper sleep, mindfulness. It's a holistic approach. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.